Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. The EFF has written to National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza requesting an urgent withdrawal of a report adopted during a joint finance committee meeting. It also wants the matter removed as an item on the National Assembly's agenda this afternoon when Parliament votes. The EFF is objecting to what it describes as an incoherent, deeply flawed and illegal process. Yesterday, the ANC and IFP backed a proposal from ActionSA which supported the budget but recommended that the finance minister does away with tax hikes and provides income tax relief. The EFF Sinawo Tambo says has given the speaker until 8 o'clock this morning to resolve the issue, or they'll consider urgent legal steps. It's not clear if the speaker has responded to their letter.
This outdated and unconstitutional procedure reflects the failure of the former liberation movement to grasp that Parliament is not a rubber stamp of National Treasury's anti-poor neoliberal budget agenda. Instead of a transparent process of amendments, what we witnessed was a mockery of democratic oversight.
Meanwhile, the ANC says it won't be axing parties from the GNU that won't be supporting the national budget. Ahead of the vote in Parliament later today, the relationship between the two biggest parties in the GNU has become tense. The DA says it won't be supporting the budget in its current format, while the ANC has looked for parties outside the GNU to help it pass the budget without its biggest partner. ANC Secretary General Fihla says there's likely going to be implications for GNU partners that are not going to support the budget.
The ANC is committed to the GNU with all its partners, but the majority of partners is very important in relation to this GNU. The ANC is not wielding an axe that we want to cut people in the GNU. They will cut themselves out.
The United National Transport Union says it's ready to face off with Transnet over wages after the majority union declared a dispute with the port and rail operator. Last week, Transnet offered a multi-year wage deal, including a cumulative 17.5 increase across the board over the course of 3 financial years. The deal was adopted by UNTU's rival, the South African Transport and Allied Workers Union. But UNTU's spokesperson, Atenkosi Plaiki, says the state-owned entity has underhanded tactics by trying to unilaterally implement a deal that was signed by a minority union.
This blatant disregard for due process will leave UNTU with no choice but to exercise our constitutional right to take to the streets as we did in 2022.
She says a protracted dispute will cause irreversible damage.
The unlawful action by management will have economic consequences just as they did in 2022 when the country lost 1 billion rand a day during our industrial action. The arrogance shown by Transnet management towards UNTU will have an economic standstill.
And Myanmar's military leader has rejected calls by armed rebel groups for a ceasefire to allow desperately needed aid into areas hit by a magnitude 7.7 earthquake. 3 armed groups called for a temporary stop to the fighting as the official death toll from Friday's quake climbed to 2,700 with hundreds others missing. But the leader says the military will continue to take necessary security measures. The UN says the earthquake has compounded an already dire crisis in Myanmar, which is in the midst of a 4-year civil war. The earthquake was felt in neighboring countries like Thailand, where the death toll there stands at 21. Rescuers in both countries are still searching for survivors, though hopes are fading as more bodies are pulled from the ruins of collapsed buildings. Gold is trading at $3,125.67 an ounce. The rand is at 18.53 to the dollar, 23.93 to the pound, 19.99 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $74.50 a barrel.
Major reported incidents have cleared. We just have the usual stop-and-go traffic getting into the richest square mile in Africa. M1 North at Greystone Drive, Marlborough Drive, heading west, leaving Marlborough as you head towards the M1 highway, as well as traffic lights out in the nation's capital, Vanderboom South. This is at Steve Biko Road and Lavender Road. Please expect delays.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated thundershowers expected. Temperatures will peak at highs between 22 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. The EFF has written to National Assembly Speaker Togo Didiza requesting an urgent withdrawal of a report adopted during a joint finance committee meeting.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app,
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
Seven minutes after 9 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the Wednesday edition of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for being with us here on 702. I hope you are well this morning, that your morning is going well so far. So, do you know that you can now watch this show on YouTube live and not just hear us? Go over to our YouTube channel right now on 702 if you're able to, if you want to actually watch the proceedings in not Parliament. You know, earlier when I spoke to Bongani, I said, we, referring to members of Parliament. Maybe I'm preparing to venture into politics. No, I'm not. If you want to watch what is happening in studio right now, you can go on to our YouTube channel and you can actually watch me right now. I'm actually waving at one of the cameras here in studio. We've got about 4 cameras, 6 cameras. We've got 6 cameras in studio that give you just different angles. And you will see Abel as well, the Abel that I talk about all the time. So go on to 702 YouTube channel. If you want to watch the interviews, we'll have guests in studio. You don't have to wait for us to upload the YouTube video. You can actually just see that live if you want to watch this as you're listening to it. The open line starts now on 011-883-0702. The WhatsApp line is 072-702-1702. What is going to happen in Parliament today? My goodness. Yesterday we spent some time trying to explain to you what the process is in as far as the budget is concerned. And what the Finance Committee has to process. But things took a turn yesterday when the DA and the ANC couldn't find a deal, and ActionSA made a proposal. A proposal that involves the removal of the tax increase. But it's only a recommendation and not an amendment of the fiscal framework. So ActionSA's goal is still far from being achieved. Because to stop the VAT increase, if you want to stop the VAT increase from taking effect on the 1st of May, a new rules amendment bill must be passed by Parliament before that date. And we don't have a lot of time. There's only about, 29-30 days left. In terms of the law, the Finance Minister, Enoch Kotongwana, must actually be given about 2 days to respond to any proposed amendment of the fiscal framework by the committee. This would require then a postponement of the scheduled vote in the National Assembly today. Because otherwise, what are you voting for? If the amendments, the Finance Minister has not come back with a response to what the committee has discussed. So there must be a law that annuls the announcement of VAT. Otherwise, it's going to take effect as announced by the Minister. And what happened in Parliament yesterday, which is why the EFF, you've heard in Eyewitness News, the EFF has now written to the Speaker of Parliament, and they want the Speaker to withdraw the fiscal framework report that was adopted yesterday. And one of the things they're raising is that it contains language that was actually inserted after the committee had already adopted it. So they're raising a number of issues around how incoherent that report is. And one of the issues that are central there is that the Finance Committee, by law, is actually required to either accept or amend the fiscal framework. There's no legislative provision for conditional acceptance. In other words, the parties can't say, oh yeah, we accept this fiscal framework with the condition that the minister will come back and. Either you make those amendments that are proposed there and adopt that, or you accept the fiscal framework as it is. And that's what the EFF has concerns about. So what we'll do between 10 and 11 o'clock is try make it make sense. What happened last night and what does it actually mean for today's vote? And what does it mean for the DA in the GNU? I was speaking to some of the ANC members of Parliament last night who were in that caucus meeting that started just after 8:30 in the evening. And the president was clear in that caucus that, well, the ball is in the DA's court. If they don't vote for this budget, they might as well say bye-bye to the GNU, because they're essentially kicking themselves out of the GNU. They're not being pushed out. They're kicking themselves out. So what do you think the DA's approach should be here? I wonder. ActionSA is already readying itself to serve in government. I'll play you a clip of Herman Mashaba last night on SABC when he said, we are ready. We've got people that are capable to be ministers. So are we just about to see the reconfiguration of the GNU? Today is going to be telling. It's going to really help us understand. Whatever the proceedings at 2 p.m. in Parliament will help us understand what will mean, what this GNU and what form this GNU is actually going to take. By the way, Fihla Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, held a briefing yesterday. I don't know if you heard what he said about the 0.5% VAT increase. He said it won't be a permanent one. It will be withdrawn when the economy improves. My goodness.
The only issue in terms of the budget has been the question of VAT. And we have always argued as the ANC that right from the onset, when Treasury came up with 2%, we did not agree. We did not agree, but we ran out of options in terms of what we need to do, except to cushion us to have a 0% intervention, which is not permanent. As our economic situation increases, it not increases, our economic situation is perfected. This 0% is not permanent, will be withdrawn. And then also, there's a whole lot of other things on the basket that have been addressed going forward. Even the spending, those issues, President put them long before us that they need to be addressed. The DA raises that particular issue. We say, but it has already been addressed. Some of the issues that have been addressed do not belong to the budget now. We need to engage on them, but people want agreement that there should be guarantees that these matters will be addressed.
So that's Fihla Mbalula talking about how this VAT increase won't be a permanent one. Oh my goodness. Isn't this exactly what the ANC did in 2018? Remember back in 2018 when they took that decision of increasing VAT for the very first time ever? And they kept saying the Treasury would review it. This increase from 14% at the time to 15% within 3 years. And now, how many years is it now since 2018? Is it 6-7 years later? We are getting another VAT increase. Well, at least that's what they had proposed. That's what they've proposed. And someone was reminded me of just the lies of politicians. How do you know politicians are lying? How do you know politicians are lying? When their lips start moving. I always think about that. At 11 o'clock, we're going to do our Listener's Choice feature. And today, one of our listeners asked that we bring in an expert who can explain the U.S. refugee status. Remember Donald Trump, the U.S. president, signed that order to help the Afrikaners from South Africa resettle in the U.S. after claims of discrimination and land confiscation and persecution. So we're going to bring in someone to come and explain to us how this process unfolds. I know that just yesterday, I saw that the U.S. President's administration was planning to turn even office spaces in Pretoria into temporary refugee centers to consider more than 8,000 applications that they received. And the New York Times was reporting, in fact, that based on the documents the publication has seen, phase 1 of the program is going to involve the U.S. deploying multiple teams to convert commercial office space in Pretoria into an ad hoc refugee centers. So that's an extraordinary development. Like, there will be refugee centers, converting commercial space into refugee centers. So we're going to give you an update on how that process is unfolding. If you are considering maybe taking up the offer, you may want to listen to that conversation at 11 o'clock. We're going to wrap up the show at 11:30 with the sharing space. That's the show coming up over the next 3 hours.
Clement Manyathela, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856
92.7
and 106 FM.
How often have we complained about potholes? How many times have we complained about the financial cost on us as a result of potholes? Now we're talking about the cost to life. There's a motorbike delivery driver that died in Northriding this week on Monday after a vehicle in front of him allegedly hit the brakes in a bid to avoid a huge pothole on Blandford Road in Northriding. I've seen that pothole myself. Now there's someone who has died. And according to the community member, the Johannesburg Roads Agency actually had been there to fix some of the potholes in the area. But there was challenges with this specific one. It was so big. And they came to actually fix it hours after the accident, according to community members. So what I want us to do now quickly is to bring in different people here who will help us understand what really transpired here. So I want to start off first with Zweli. In fact, before I go to Zweli Nyathi, let me start with Xolani Fihla, who is the spokesperson for JMPD. And then I'm going to bring in the Johannesburg Roads Agency CEO. I'll bring in a councillor around that area as well. Xolani, we'll start with you. Thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Thank you for the opportunity, and let me also greet the listeners.
Yeah. What do you understand happened about this incident on Blandford Road on Monday?
Yes, we can confirm that unfortunately a fatal accident occurred. It's on that specific road called Blandford Road between Ascot Avenue and Hyperion Drive in Northriding. The incident happened on Monday evening, and it involved 3 vehicles. It's a silver Toyota Starlet and a big boy motorcycle, and the third vehicle was a Suzuki Swift. And from the preliminary information that we did receive, and from when our accident unit officer was attending to the accident, it is alleged that the Toyota Starlet and the big boy motorcycle were traveling north on Blandford Road, and then the Toyota being slowed down due to a large pothole in the roadway, and then the motorcycle trying to avoid the vehicle in front clipped the rear of the Toyota and collided with the Suzuki Swift, which was traveling on the southern side of Blandford Road. And unfortunately, from that accident, the driver of the big boy motorcycle then sustained fatal injuries and was declared deceased on the scene.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much, Xolani, for that. I wanted Xolani to come and confirm the incident and help us understand what happened. That's the spokesperson for JMPD. Now, Ralf Bittkau is the councillor for Ward 101 in Johannesburg, around that area, joining us also on the line. Ralf, thank you for also making time. My understanding is that as the community around that area has been complaining about that pothole for a while now.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners. Yes, not only the community and me, we've been escalating the potholes not only in Northriding, but also in Northwold, in Bromhof, my entire ward. There's a total lack of service delivery as far as pothole repairs and it's service delivery right through, but this is now becoming an issue, goes beyond anything. We are now losing lives because of the lack of service delivery, and we cannot have that.
Mm.
That is totally out of the question. Well, I've been onto JRA. They've been promising me, we're coming, and they don't come. We were promised on Monday that they would have a team on President Fushia, which is another major road in the area that is exploding at the moment because of groundwater pushing up the tarmac. It's also impossible. And they did a temporary sort of repair job over the weekend and then said, no, we'll be there on Monday. Well, nobody's seen them. I could imagine that maybe they were there and they're now designing what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very simple design. You've got to make sure that you put a drain across the road and a pipe under the road, and you put a drain in catching the groundwater.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing fancy about it. I mean, I've been in contracting for 55 odd years. I've built roads, and I've advised them numerous times on exactly what to do. They agree with me, and then nothing happens, or they do a half job.
So after this incident, Ralf, what happened? Did they come to fix that pothole?
Oh, the very next morning, first thing, they were there and they fixed the pothole. And they only did that pothole and they buggered off again. They did nothing else. You know, which tells me, well, you know, what are we trying to cover up? I mean, come on, guys, really.
Yeah.
We cannot live like this. This is, I mean, really, the way that the whole city is degenerating as far as infrastructure is concerned. What really has to happen now is that with the new budget, they're coming in and getting before the council. What should be happening is that they say, you know what, we cut all the other budgets and we've got 84 billion. Fantastic. Let's take 60 billion and put it into infrastructure, into Joburg Water, into city power, and into JRA for the roads.
Yeah, listen, I spoke to the mayor of Johannesburg last night and I asked him about the budget on infrastructure maintenance, and he said, yeah, we need to raise it to about 7-8% and take it from the lower 4% or so. And I thought, yeah, but the budget on maintenance has always been incredibly low. That doesn't make sense. If you know that you've got infrastructure that has to be maintained in order for it to function well, why would you budget so less on it? Doesn't make sense. And then you want to complain much later on when we're starting to experience issues. Ralf, let me thank you for coming through. Ralf Bittkau, who is a councillor for Ward 101 in Johannesburg. Let's bring in Zweli Nyathi now, who's the JRA CEO. Mr. Nyathi, thank you for making time for us as well. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Good morning to the listeners.
We've been complaining as the residents of the city about the cost financially as a result of these potholes. Now we're talking about the cost to life.
Yes. Thanks, Clement. I think I'm very much aware of the situation. And I just want to say we as JRA are doing our best to sort it out. So first and foremost, I think the rain really disturbed the program. I'm sitting with a list of streets here that are being repaired in that particular area. That at least one can go and testify that we've been dealing with that area. I know Ralf, the councillor, we have spoken. We've had good conversations around the area and what we're going to do. So now that it's not raining anymore, there's no excuses. But it is incorrect to say we worked on Saturday and then accident happened, we went in the morning. In the morning, there was no rain and work continued. And unfortunately, in the last 3-4 weeks, that's what happens. Heavy rains, potholes comes up, and then we try to work, and then it rains, we have to stop. So we've been doing our best, really. Yes, I understand the infrastructure is deteriorating, and as JRA, I came to your station and say, now we're even starting to resurface roads instead of just patching. That will give it a longer lifespan. We have an asphalt plant that we opened, and it's giving us more asphalt to do the work.
Yeah.
I know that in other areas they want to take the work into their hands. Not everyone is an engineer. Should they do a poor quality road, if they take things into their hands, liability will come back to JRA. We urge to communities that if there are issues, they must escalate. I can be held liable as the accounting officer of the entity. But it is incorrect to say that we are not doing anything. There's plans as we speak. There are teams on the ground, but the rain really delayed the progress. Instead, it created more potholes in an infrastructure that is already tired.
Yeah.
That's the problem we're dealing with right now.
So who takes account? I mean, I'm just thinking, Mr. Nyathi, there is someone who has died here. There's someone who has lost his life because of a pothole. That is not okay. And this is, if this is someone who's possibly been paying their rates, that can't be life for the people of Johannesburg. They're losing so much money trying to fix their tires. I myself had an experience, almost a terrible accident last night driving, and I was trying to swerve because there was a pothole that was also covered by water I couldn't see. I could have been involved in an accident. So the point I'm trying to make is this is now reaching, it's been a crisis, and now we have to be concerned about how we could possibly lose our lives because of the potholes in the city. That cannot be life.
I fully agree with you, Clement. I'm also a victim of that. But here's the issue. As you might have seen, even on Monday, we had the provincial government trying to also intervene and see how they can assist us. We are really working hard to try and deal with the situation, but we're dealing with an old situation. And I understand the frustration from the councillor because he's been talking about these things and nothing really happened in the past, or it was not adequate. I can say that, the incident is really a sad one, but we also need to look into the report as well, because from my peers or colleagues there, I think, the car that was in front slammed the brake and the distance was not even that much. So hence, that accident happened. But I'm not making an excuse for JRA, and I'm not making an excuse for us as the city of Johannesburg. All we're saying is the work will be visible now that it's not raining. And I urge all the citizens, wherever they need to prioritize, we cannot refill the entire city overnight, but wherever there's life-threatening issues and urgent matters, we'll deploy our team accordingly, because we have regional teams. As I'm saying, it's sunny now. We have no excuse to make. We have asphalt. We have teams ready to do what they need to do.
Have you fixed this particular pothole that caused this deadly accident?
It was fixed. It was part of the plan. Actually, when the accident happened, work has already resumed in that particular area. I can confirm that. So they had to stop because of the weather conditions. And unfortunately, a life was lost. But they continued with the work. Even now, they are in the area as we speak on other streets. They gave me a whole list of streets that they are doing this week around that area.
All right. Zweli Nyathi, appreciate your time. Thank you for coming through. That's the JRA CEO. I don't know what cost have you experienced as a result of the potholes? What has been the cost to you? We've been complaining about the financial cost. We're spending so much money trying to fix our tires. Now we're dealing with a life-threatening situation. It's not just about you possibly hitting a pothole and then you possibly have to change your tires. Now we're talking about potholes that are a danger to your own life, where you can die. That's how big the potholes are in the city. That cannot be life. There are people that are paying their rates. For what? And we're constantly told it's a maintenance issue. How? This has always been their justification or their explanation for so many years. It's a maintenance issue. And yet the maintenance, the budget on maintenance is low. If it's a maintenance issue and you realize you need more money to maintain the infrastructure that you as an administration has failed to maintain over the years, why are you not increasing that budget? What's been your cost? Has it been financial? What's been your cost as a result of these potholes in the city? I'll go to your calls and WhatsApps after this latest in Eyewitness News headlines. It's 9:31. So hi.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand, telling the ANC caucus that Its Government of National Unity partner, the DA, has placed itself in an unenviable position. EWN has heard audio of both the President and his Deputy President, Paul Mashatile, addressing ANC caucus members last night. This is, of course, ahead of the Parliament voting on the 2025 budget this afternoon. Ramaphosa told ANC MPs that he had discussions with DA leader John Steenhuisen, and he told them that the ball is now on the side of the courts and he must now work with his party so that they can find their own way back. The two parties have deadlocked over the budget policy statements, with some in the ANC calling for the DA to leave if it can't support a GNU budget. We'll give you more details on the story. AfriForum has threatened legal action against senior officials who have been implicated the principal of a school where a 7-year-old girl allegedly was raped. The right-wing organization has written a letter to the Provincial Police Commissioner seeking an intervention, claiming that the SAPS has failed to investigate the incident. AfriForum says this has the impact to further tarnish the name of their client, which is the school principal, who has refused to provide his DNA sample to officials amid investigations. And prolific American actor Val Kilmer has died. He was aged 65. Kilmer was propelled to fame with the movies Top Gun and went on to star in roles as Batman and Jim Morrison. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
This EWN Traffic is brought to you by cars.co.za. Let's find what moves you. Vangeli, how are the roads looking?
Well, not too bad, Clement. No major reported incidents thus far throughout Gauteng. Just a bit of pressure building Bayers-Naudé Drive in both directions. And this is affecting Grand Park Ridge and Honeydew as you're heading towards Easterholt Drive. Similar pressure on Winnie Mandela Drive in the Bryanston area southbound as you head towards Main Road. So that's leaving Nickel Way, and then some stop-and-go traffic in the city of Ekurhuleni. R24 westbound N3 north to Geluli is also quite slow, so please do anticipate that pressure. While in the nation's capital, it's just going to be those traffic lights trying to slow you down in Vanderboom South at Lavender Road and Steve Biko, as well as Francis Bart and Wessels in Arcadia. Please drive with ease. If there's anything else, SMS only if it is safe to do so, or just leave that to the passengers on 31702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Hey, Jim, what's wrong? Hi, Bob. I'm just so confused. I'm trying to buy a car, and I don't know where to stop. Well, have you tried to... have you tried to... Sorry, we're trying to do an advert.
Whatever car you want to buy or sell, cut through the and just go to cars.co.za and let's find what moves you. Cars.co.za.
Africa Milani.
Weekday mornings,
4 to 6.
We also need to be quite optimal in using the money we have access to, given the fact that it's only a fraction of what we need to improve the infrastructure in this country.
I think one of the things the President did hint on, it's not quite clear how it might happen, but it's time that the private sector became involved in the water sector infrastructure development and also planning as well for the future. And I'm not seeing that happening fast enough.
Kevin Winter is an emeritus professor at UCT, also with the Future Water Institute.
Africa Milani.
4 to 6 on 702.
Dear Journal, day 3045 of trying to be an adult. I can't figure out the secret to working, cooking, cleaning, exercising, socializing, and sleeping all in one day. It's exhausting. Maybe the answer is to do it all terribly.
Got evicted from the family home? Get covered at pineapple.co.za. It's like 570 Rand a month, so it's 100% the insurance for you. Underwritten by Old Mutual Alternative Risk Transfer Insurer Limited, licensed non-life insurer and authorized FSP. Premiums are risk profile dependent.
Hi, I'm Lewis Hamilton. Victory demands everything, but the journey is never solo. My team carves the way, data and innovation are my compass. This is how today's champions are made.
Drive your success and trade like a champion. CFI, a global leading broker now in South Africa. Access over 15,000 instruments, advanced trading tools, 24/7 support, and superior trading services. Visit cfi.trade today. CFI Financial is an authorized financial services provider.
CFI, empower yourself.
To walk the talk is to turn words into meaningful actions. and it's what we at 702 are committed to doing every day. We're also committed to following the rules set out by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission's Code of Conduct to give you balanced programming, fair comment, and accurate news. But if we stumble along the way and you feel we're not living up to the code, let us know on comment@702.co.za. And if after that you're still not happy, you can direct your complaint in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission, PO Box 412365, Craig Hall 2024. For more, visit bccsa.co.za. Your voice,
Your station.
your open line.
Walk the talk with Clement Manyathela
on 702.
23 minutes before 10 o'clock.
Morning 702 listeners. So we stay in Marvinton area in an estate where for some unknown reason the main roads fall under the municipality and they are atrocious. They were literally falling apart. Potholes, crumbling, falling apart. It's been escalated. The ward councillor, everyone comes in. Sorry, there is no budget. The only alternative was that the residents who pay astronomical rates and taxes, in excess of 5,000-6,000 rand a month, right, have to pay additional levies to the municipality because we cannot fix it privately because it's against the law to get these roads fixed. So what do we actually pay these rates and taxes for? And I've said it time and time again, the only way they are going to actually stop this theft and sit up is if everybody, millions of people, stop paying rates and taxes, because there is zero service delivery. In the same estate, try to find a working street light.
Clement, just on that issue of potholes and JRA, I'm staying in a suburb called Portview in the west of Johannesburg. I think we are paying rates in excess of 6,000 or 7,000 rand a month, and the street we live in, I mean, it's worse than streets in most areas in Johannesburg that pay less rates. The streets are so bad, and we're expected to comply with the rates every month. I mean, it's just crazy. KG here.
Yeah, it is crazy, KG. It really, really is crazy. Tabang, you calling us from Rustenburg. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. How are you?
I'm all right, man. Go ahead.
Clement, my car is sitting at the tunnel charge now as we speak because somebody was avoiding a pothole and they just came to my side of the vehicle, and he was actually coming for my driver's door, and I outside the road and he hit the back of my body. The bike is at the tunnel as we speak. Very bad.
It is terrible.
Very bad.
So many incidents. Yeah, I'm so glad that you're safe, Tabang, and all the best. You had the panel beaters. That's going to cost you a lot of money. I was in that situation myself last night when I was leaving work. I had to swerve to the right, and as I was swerving to the right, there's a car that was coming through, and that car had to swerve as well to avoid impact. That's what many of us are experiencing on our roads. So we're not now just worried about, I may actually have to, pay more money to fix my car, to fix and get new tires. Now you're worried about someone in front of you may not see it. Someone in front of you or who's driving opposite you may have to swerve and there may be impact. That's where we are. Potholes in the city are life-threatening. Joe, you're in Rustenburg. Good morning.
Morning, how are you?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
Right. Look, I think that guy, if he's a civil engineer, he should be coming with a solution. He should know that rain shouldn't matter. The issue, I think it's a very flimsy excuse to say it is raining, waiting for the rain to stop. An engineer is trained to develop solutions irrespective of what the weather conditions are. I think what he's saying, I heard even the mayor yesterday saying the same thing on your other show. It shouldn't be an excuse. And to leave the budget in terms of operational budget of maintenance, 6% is less than a quarter what is required. You require 20% for each cost of the project. I think all what they're doing is just a very good excuse to avoid maybe an interview and then just leave it as it is, and the situation will continue. And if you look at their budget, bulk of their costs in terms of the budget goes to, I think it's about close to 80% goes to salaries, and which is a huge problem, because if you can have 3 engineers, they can literally assess all these roads and chill out the condition. And a pothole is never designed, meant to be patched. A pothole tells you that the road has gone beyond its lifetime. So what do? You start preparing in terms of the resurfacing with certain specifics. All what they're telling you is just hogwash.
Joe in Rustenburg, thank you so much for your contribution. Sean, you're in Randburg. Go ahead. Good morning. Sean, the line there. I don't know what's going on. Maybe you're in the rain. So we're going to try and re-establish that. In the meantime, let's go to some WhatsApp voice notes on 0727021702.
Good morning, Clem. Kodila here. For me, it's really frustrating, especially with people who live in townships. The roads in townships are not taken care of. Just the other week, where I stay currently in Kliptown, the roads are so bad, and someone had to be taken to hospital. The car that was taking that person to the hospital had to wait for that person in a further corner because the road is so bad they can't even drive in, and people had to help the person to get to the car. It's really frustrating that simple things like this, organizations like the JRA are not taking care of the roads, especially in townships, and they have to react when something like an accident happens. It's sad.
Clement, the weirdest thing is that there were guys fixing potholes here in Pretoria East, and then they'll be fixing the smallest potholes, the smallest ones. They'll fix here 100 meters, they'll skip the big one, then drive 100 meters, fix a small one, drive another 100 meters, skip the big one, drive 100 meters, fix the small one. And then yesterday evening, 2 cars got into an accident when one guy braked when he saw the pothole. Luckily, nobody was injured,
Hi, Clement. No, this is wrong. You know what these guys do? Anyway, good morning, Clement, and the listeners. You know what these guys do? When they fill up a pothole, they come and put sand on that hole. And after they put sand on that hole, and they just cover it with a small layer of the tar. That's not going to be strong for rain. You need to put the tar all the way from the bottom. They need to do it properly. They're not doing it properly. These potholes persist. They do it in our neighborhood every day. They do the same pothole every day non-stop. It's not going to work like that. They are not doing quality job. They're doing poor job all the time. So what he's telling is an excuse.
Yeah. So you are in Highlands North. Good morning.
Yeah, Clem, I was listening to your interview with the guy from JRA. And I've got experience from council, having been on council for many years. And the big problem is, first of all, there's no supervision when work is done on the roads, fixing potholes. But a bigger problem is that you have entities like JHB Ward, etc., digging up the road and then leaving it there, which causes a major problem, more than just potholes, because they can take up half the road. I've got experience because I keep on reporting these things and emailing the relevant person and persons, and nothing gets done, or it can take up to 6 months to get one problem sorted out. I mean, there's a street in Parkwood that's been 2 years that the whole street needs refixing because of the road being dug up, and nothing has been done, etc., etc. There's definitely no supervision. There's no adherence. And probably, as somebody said, there's no budgets to sort it out. But more importantly, Joburg Road's supposed to send out inspectors in their areas and check all the various roads on what condition they are. That's not happening. It hasn't happened for years.
Yeah, so
and I'll leave you with this note. You know, the a country can only survive economically if its roads are able to move services and goods around. And our roads in Joburg definitely doesn't fit that profile.
I agree with you. I remember emceeing a conference. I think it was, there were a number of stakeholders there, including Sandral, including some stakeholders on the continent, and they were talking about how roads that's actually the preferred mode of transport for business transactions. Like a lot of people actually do that on the roads. They, in between the different countries on the continent. So if you're not fixing these roads, there is going to be an impact on the economy. There's going to be an impact on business arrangements. So it's not just lives we're concerned about. There's a man who's now died because of a pothole. There's a man who has died because they were in an accident. Someone was trying to swerve and avoid a huge pothole on Blandford Road in Northriding. It's a pile-up. A delivery driver is now dead. That cannot be live. It cannot be live. How many times are we going to wait for 6 more to die before the city of Johannesburg is actually going to take it upon itself to increase that budget on maintenance and speed up the process of fixing potholes, which are almost everywhere in and around Johannesburg? Cargo says, Clement, I replaced 5 run-flat tires in a period of a year due to potholes. That cost me about 3,500 Rand and 3,800 per tire plus VAT. It's absolutely ridiculous. The poor are getting poorer every day because of government's incompetence. Another one says, Clement, there's a pothole in Kudu Avenue in Allen's Neck that is going to cause a major accident. It's growing larger every day, and cars going towards Clearwater Mall have to swerve into oncoming traffic to avoid it. That's a message from Ntlantla. Another message says, this one says, Yo, Clement, I'm watching you and Abel there. That pen that you have, did you eat that lid? Poor lid, Shem. Thanks for the great show. Well, thanks to you, Anonymous. Please leave my pen alone. Yeah, when I'm hosting the show, I need to hold something. So if you're watching, this is the pen that I actually hold when I'm broadcasting and talking, and I do often eat the lid. I do eat the lid. It's almost done. So if you've just joined us, I was telling the listeners earlier on that we are broadcasting. Now you can actually watch us on YouTube. So as we broadcast the show, if you're able to do that, you can go on YouTube, go to the 702 YouTube page, and you can watch this show as it broadcasts live, and you can even see the guests as they come in. We've got about 6 cameras in studio that are giving you all the different angles. So that's an option for you. Let's go back to your WhatsApps.
Good day, Clement. Good day, 702 Landers. Abraham in Florida. Clement, I think if people really could transfer the cost to JRA and any other municipality, Ekurhuleni, for not fixing the potholes and the damage that comes with. I've witnessed a case here in, I think it's Industria, where a car literally hit a pothole and the whole pool and arm went out. The car was damaged badly. Fortunately, the guy was still alive. So I just wanted to know if there is, you can find out if there is a channel that people can transfer the cost, or where we can claim from City of Johannesburg in this case for the cost that we incur with hitting potholes. Thanks, Clement. Great show, by the way.
Good morning, Clement. You know, when people like to make excuses of how they are failing to do or give people services, okay, they will hide behind the rains that we have been having. Okay, now the winter season is coming. There won't be any rain.
Let's see if they'll be able to finish covering up those potholes. Then we'll have another conversation. Because excuses. That's all we hear every day.
Hi, Clement. You're speaking of potholes, guys. My condolences to the life that was lost. But I don't know if it was last year, but a couple of months ago, it was on John Pellman's show, I think. There's a guy that kind of sustained injuries, was in hospital. This was in Northwest. They actually sued the government, put them responsible for that pothole thing. And he actually won the case. I mean, wow. Now we lost their life. This is not right, guys. I mean, even myself, I'm affected by potholes, but hey, what can we do? I get the advantage that I know the road, so I know where the pothole is. And you drive with Waze, so that helps you identify where the potholes are. But thanks for a good show. Bakang from Centurion.
Yeah, Bakang. I'm actually receiving a number of pictures here on the WhatsApp line of people who are showing me how damaged their cars are. There are people sending us pictures of how damaged their cars are. There's a car that's hit a tree, and that's the cost. Because people are trying to avoid potholes that are everywhere, almost on our streets. Listen to what the mayor of Johannesburg said. This is the mayor of Johannesburg, Dada Morero. And I was asking him about what President Cyril Ramaphosa said when he raised unhappiness about the state of the city, the potholes, the traffic lights that are not working, the city that is not clean. And basically the mayor said when the president called him and raised these concerns, there was actually a quick reaction from the city to address the issues. And I actually asked him, why does it have to take a president to raise the issue that the citizens of Johannesburg have been raising for so long, for the city to address those issues? Why does it have to take the president to say, I'm not happy with the state of the city, for them to go and amass resources and say, we're going to react quickly? That's not a city that cares about its citizens. That's a city that cares about the head of state. And that's not correct. That's not okay.
Frankly, he actually called me on the day before, on the day that he did the walkabout at the venue, and said, these are the concerns I have. And immediately went into the administration and said, guys, what's happening? And everybody had to put resources together. And I think the city was caught not ready at that point. I think the administration had overlooked some of the important issues. I think the thinking has always been maybe it's coming a bit later, only to find there was a meeting of foreign ministers coming on that day. And I think there was a quick reaction from the city to address the issues that needed to address.
Did it have to take the president though to come and raise that? Because South Africans complain every single day about the state of our roads, about traffic lights that are not working. So if you can manage and amass resources when the president raises a concern, why can't you do the same when the people of Johannesburg do?
We are doing exactly that, Clement. You are aware that for a month now we've been in the CBD, trying to unlock the CBD, trying to reclaim it back. We are focusing.
That's what the mayor was saying, right? That's what the mayor was saying about how they were able to respond quickly as the city. And it's the same conversation I had with him about the so-called G20 routes. Well, he ended up saying there was a matter of language. I mean, but you and I know what they meant by that, right? It's the same thing, that there's somehow a prioritization of things when there are visitors coming or when there's a president who's raising the issue. What about us who are the citizens of Johannesburg? What about us who are paying rates and are saying, these are the services we deserve, not even the services we want. These are the services we deserve because we're actually paying for them. We are paying. So we deserve it. You're not doing us a favor, but there has to be a president who comes and complains. There's got to be visitors who are coming from other countries for the very issues that we've been raising for so long to now be addressed. That cannot be the way. Len says on the WhatsApp line, Clement, I lost a tire, run flat over the weekend. I don't have faith, even in the Johannesburg mayor. I'm so upset, but it is what it is. That's a message there from Len. Someone else commenting on what Fihla Mbalula said earlier says, Fihla says the 0.5% is temporary. That's a lie. It will not be a temporary but permanent. The ANCs are masters at being untruthful. That's Lee in Alberton. And then another one says, Clement, regarding that VAT issue, I'm wondering if it's just me. Maybe I missed it, but where is the voice of COSATU, NUM, and other civil society groups? What about Save SA? It just feels like we are at a mercy of political parties. What can I do as an ordinary citizen to show disgust to this to these issues? VAT is going up. We can't keep accepting these things and protesting on social media. Well, Leo, the COSATU has been speaking. The NUM has been speaking. All these stakeholders you're mentioning, they've done a number of interviews just talking about how they do not, even after the budget was presented by the finance minister last month, they said, we don't agree with that. They don't. But hey, let's wait and see what happens in Parliament today at 2 p.m. Maybe this proposal or recommendation that ActionSA put up that was supported by the ANC and the IFP, maybe that's going to spur up the finance minister to come up with other options that doesn't include VAT. Who knows? If that happens, that will be a victory for you and I as South Africans. God knows we cannot afford another VAT increase in this economy. In fact, that's a conversation we're going to have in the second hour. I'm going to bring in the different parties there in Parliament so we can get a sense of where they stand, explain to us what happened yesterday and what it actually means in as far as VAT is concerned. It's 2 minutes now before 10 o'clock.
Get tested this April at Specsavers and we'll give you a free optical frame up to the value of 1,000 Rand. Specsavers for affordable eye care and a whole lot more.
Now, you wouldn't want to pay more than you need to for electricity. So why overpay for car insurance? Switch to OutSurance and you could save big every month. Zandile, a 36-year-old woman, is a real OutSurance client who saves a mind-blowing 918 Rand a month on a 2024 Cherry Tiggo 1.5 litre. Isn't it time you got the real deal? Don't pay more. Switch and save today. SMS out to 45142. That's out to 45142. With OutSurance, you always get something out. A licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Joburg, get ready because Kings and Queens of Comedy is back. A royal flush of laughter hits Emperor's Palace on the 12th of April. Featuring Alfred Adrian, Darren Wackett Simpson, Angel Campy, Anna Lakshmi, Tracy Lee Oliver, Mutu Murugan, Kanyisa Bono, Chris Forrest, Joey Rasdi, Conrad Koch and Chester Missing. Book now at Ticket Pro. Kings and Queens of Comedy is brought to you by Blue Blood.
At 7:02,
we are proud of a lot of things,
but none more than our connection to you.
because we know when we walk the talk,
We're never alone.
I had been waiting so long for UIF for 18 months, and Kabazela and John Perlman had somebody from UIF on. And you know what? I finally got paid, and I just want to say it's actually saved my life. So 702, thank you, and you reach far and wide to all people.
Every SMS,
voice note,
email,
phone call,
your every word leads to action.
that changes lives, changes minds, uplifts communities, and holds authority to account.
Together, we've turned dialogue into good deeds.
And promises into progress.
Yes, we did that. You and 702. So, stay tuned.
Because if this is how far we've come, imagine how much further we can go.
When we stick together, 702.
Let's walk the talk. This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand, telling the ANC that the DA has placed itself in an unenviable position ahead of Parliament's 2025 budget vote. EWN has heard audio of both the President and his Deputy Paul Mashatile addressing ANC caucus members last night. Ramaphosa says he told DA leader John Steenhuisen that his party has hit a dead end and it's now up to them to find their way out. The two parties have deadlocked over the budget policy statements, with some in the ANC calling for the DA to leave if it can't support a GNU budget. Tsidi Madia takes a look.
Never disrupt your adversaries while they're busy making mistakes. This is the cautionary tale ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa told members of his party as he made it clear that he believed the DA has already defined itself outside of the GNU. Ramaphosa shared insights on his conversation with John Steenhuisen, including criticizing the DA for wanting to be both in government and its opposition at the same time. The president says the DA must take a decision today which will define where it stands. His deputy Paul Mashatile says if the DA refuses to support the budget, then it doesn't deserve to be in the GNU. He's equated this to the party firing itself, further questioning how it would enjoy implementing programs from a budget it opposed. Parliament's vote on the budget this afternoon will be seen as a crucial test for the GNU. That session will kick off at 2 p.m. Tsidi Madia, Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, as the approval of the country's budgeting framework hangs by a thread, Parliament's looking to tighten its rules on the process. Never before has the legislature dealt with amending a budget, as the ANC had always used its majority to rubber stamp what's presented by the finance minister. And for the first time yesterday, the ANC had to call on an unlikely ally, ActionSA, to get its fiscal framework and revenue proposals to pass the committee stage. And while that meeting was running onto overtime, a rules subcommittee was simultaneously considering introducing more explicit guidelines for future budgets. Lindsay Dentlinga reports.
The legislature currently finds itself in the unprecedented position of trying to pass a budget with parties both in and out of the government of national unity at odds over its contents, and the process followed in committee yesterday to approve the fiscal framework for presentation to the National Assembly. Secretary to Parliament, Masipulele Xaso, says while it's not imperative that new rules are adopted for the current budget cycle, it would give greater clarity in future on the timelines that should be followed. Parliament has never before had to grapple with making any substantive amendments to the budget.
Basically, what we're doing here is to create a mechanism for Parliament to amend money bills if that is what it wants to do.
Additional guidelines would also ensure enough time is given for public consultation and for the Appropriations Committee to mediate in the event of a dispute over conflicting amendments. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
AfriForum has threatened legal action against senior officials who have implicated the principal of a school where a 7-year-old girl was raped. The right-wing organisation has written a letter to the Provincial Police Commissioner in the Eastern Cape seeking an intervention, claiming that the SAPS has failed to investigate the rape. AfriForum says this has the impact to further tarnish the name of their client, who has refused to provide his DNA sample for officials to investigate. Zolega Kotashe reports.
Lobby group AfriForum says it has addressed a minimum of 3 letters to the station commander of the SAPS in Matatiele, but received no response. AfriForum says the silence and the lack of clarity in the investigation creates fertile ground for the claims that the principal is a suspect and may be guilty. The organisation says it may pursue opening cases of defamation against those who've identified the headmaster as a suspect, rapist, and even commented on his imminent arrest. Among these are ANC Secretary-General Fikile Mbalula, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu, and Eastern Cape Education MEC Fundile Gade. AfriForum spokesperson Barry Bateman.
He cannot be a suspect because on a proper assessment of the objective facts demonstrates that he was nowhere near the location where the rape took place.
The organisation claims that the minor failed to identify the principal as a suspect. Thus, it argues that the only inference that can be made is that the SAPS correctly excluded the principal as a suspect. Zolega Kotashe, Eyewitness News.
And American actor Val Kilmer, who starred in some of the biggest movies of the 1980s and 90s, including Top Gun and Batman Forever, has died at the age of 65. He also appeared in the 1991's The Doors, playing the legendary band's frontman Jim Morrison. Kilmer died of pneumonia in Los Angeles. His daughter says her father had been diagnosed with throat cancer in 2014, but later recovered. Surgery affected his voice and curtailed his acting career, but he returned to the screen to reprise his role as fighter pilot Iceman along Tom Cruise in 2022's Top Gun: The Maverick. Gold is trading at $3,125.67 an ounce. The rand is at 18.53 to the dollar, 23.93 to the pound, 19.99 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $74.50 a barrel.
Free-flowing traffic on most routes. Look out for pressure in Houghton Estate on 3rd Street. Mild congestion N3 North at the Galulis interchange. And of course, Rangeview Road in the Benoni Lakefield region, seeing some stop-and-go traffic. This is just near Impala, heading north towards the N12. Please drive with care.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 22 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand, telling the ANC that the DA has placed itself in an unenviable position ahead of Parliament's 2025 budget votes.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's Walk the Talk, streaming on the Prime Media Plus app,
DSTV channel 856,
92.7 and 106 FM.
8 minutes after 10 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the second hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for staying with us here on 702. And thank you for your calls, your WhatsApps on the 702 open line. If you're watching us live on YouTube, hello. We are live on YouTube. You can now watch the show and not just listen to it if you can. You can go to the 702 YouTube account and you can watch the show as it unfolds. You no longer have to wait. If we have guests in studio and we're recording a hanging out feature for you, for us to upload the YouTube video, you can just go to the 702 YouTube page to watch that. Remember, at 11 o'clock on our Listener's Choice feature, we're going to focus on just explaining to you that U.S. refugee status issue. I told you earlier that it looks like as part of phase one of that program, the United States is going to be deploying multiple teams to convert commercial office space in Pretoria into ad hoc refugee centers. Can you imagine that? So they really are convinced that the Afrikaner community is facing persecution here. Hence, these ad hoc refugee centers that are going to be set up here at the embassy or the consulate here in the US. We're going to wrap up the show at 11:30 with the sharing space.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
All right, let's try and figure out what's going to be happening at 2 p.m. later today, but also what happened yesterday in that finance committee. There are two important developments this morning. One is what President Cyril Ramaphosa said to the ANC caucus yesterday. I listened to a recording of what the president said in that ANC caucus, and you can hear how firm he was being towards the actions of the DA. He said that the DA, they cannot want to be in government and then also be in opposition. You can't have your cake and eat it. That's what he was telling the ANC caucus last night. He said the DA is defining itself outside of the GNU. If you work, and the DA had said to the ANC that if you work with other parties, that's going to be the end of the GNU. So the president in this recording I heard says, well, we have worked with other parties. So is the DA now going to walk back on that, or are they going to stay in the GNU, even though they threatened that would be the end of the GNU if the ANC works with other parties? And the ANC has, in this case, worked with ActionSA. And also in that clip, the president says, the ball is now in the DA's court. It's their choice. Whatever choice they make today at 2 p.m. on how they vote, then that choice is going to have consequences. That's what he said. So that's the first important development. The second important development is that the EFF has written to the Speaker of Parliament, and what they want is for the withdrawal of this fiscal framework report. And they've mentioned a number of things that they're concerned about. So I've invited them to come and explain that to us, what they're concerned about. I know some of you have said, we still don't understand this proposal that ActionSA has put forward, this recommendation. So I'll get ActionSA to come and explain that recommendation as well. I'll get the DA as well. So we'll have all these different parties to give us their sense of what happened yesterday, their assessment, and what does that actually mean for the budget and the sitting later today. So let's start this conversation with Sinawo Tambo, who is the Member of Parliament for the Economic Freedom Fighter. Sinawo, thank you for making time. Good morning.
Morning, Clement. Morning to the listeners.
So you've written to the Speaker asking for the withdrawal of that report. What are you concerned about?
Look, I'm a member of the Standing Committee on Finance, so I was present yesterday when the fiscal framework and revenue proposals, as well as the committee report, were tabled to the Standing Committee on Finance for purposes of either acceptance or amendment. Now, our concern is that procedurally, the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Other Related Matters Act stipulates that we must first and foremost make a clear statement as to whether we are going to accept or amend the proposed fiscal framework and revenue proposals. Before then, we proceed to interact with the committee report and also to enact amendments to that. So procedurally, this was not done, as much as we tried to impress on the committee chairperson that this is what is required of us by law. Then we proceeded to make amendments to a committee report without having made that clear statement as to whether we're going to review or amend or accept the fiscal framework or revenue proposals. Now, this was a constant debate within the committee. Ultimately, the proposition was made whether we accept the committee report. Now, the committee report and the fiscal framework and revenue proposal are two separate things. So the proposition which was made is whether we adopt a report which reflects on submissions from stakeholders, interactions with National Treasury, the Minister and SARS, and other institutions. But the proposition as to whether we as a committee accept the revenue proposals and fiscal framework as it is was not made. Only later in the evening, we receive a final draft of the committee report which makes this clear statement, whereas as members of the committee, we were not allowed to deliberate on whether we accept or amend the fiscal framework and revenue proposals in committee. So it was made in hindsight, in retrospect, without us having interacted with it as the case. So we voted on a committee report, but not on the fiscal framework, which contains the red flag. So this is a procedural error that we're raising.
So based on the law, in as far as the fiscal framework is concerned, as the committee, you would have to either amend it, vote to amend it, or vote to accept it. And you're saying neither of this was what happened yesterday.
Absolutely, this was not done, and it was also unfortunate. Yesterday there was a lot of sort of unprovoked behavior occurring because those sittings were not live streamed as normally they would be by Parliament, because the Money Bills and Amendment Procedure and Other Related Matters Act is what stipulates that we must do this. It's the legislation that gives us the powers to do this, and that was the opportunity. Because if we look at the committee report, almost 97% of stakeholders say they reject the VAT hikes. So we were then empowered to take those stakeholder submissions to amend the fiscal framework, remove the VAT hikes, and put in alternatives as to where we're going to generate the 28 billion shortfall. We did not do this, and this is a misinterpretation as well from ActionSA, who I heard you're going to speak to later. They may have a misunderstanding of the legislation that amends the VAT hikes which reside within the fiscal framework and revenue proposals. They have made a recommendation in the committee report that Treasury must within 30 days come back with an alternative, but nothing permits an amendment of the fiscal framework once it's been adopted. So I think part and parcel of ActionSA's misreading of this legislation and misreading of this process is how the meeting itself was handled, which is where we've written to the Speaker.
Okay, so just to clarify then, according to the rules, to stop the VAT increase from taking effect on the 1st of May, a new rules amendment bill would have to be passed by Parliament before that date, right? So what happens in the vote today? Because my understanding is that in terms of the law, the finance minister must at least be given about 2 days to respond to any proposed amendment of that fiscal framework by the committee. So when you vote later today, what are you voting on if there is no when there's no response to that proposal where the finance minister says, okay, cool, we're taking away this VAT and this is how we're going to get that additional revenue?
Look, first and foremost, there hasn't been an amendment. So if you read the committee report now, which we say has been drafted and crafted and put on the ATC with procedures in place that happened yesterday, it says that we accept the fiscal framework of 2025 as proposed by the Minister of Finance. Now, the committee was not seized with this as we were sitting yesterday, so that's the procedural error that occurred. But as things stand now, the current fiscal framework and revenue proposals that are going to be voted on in Parliament contain the 0.5% VAT hikes this year and next year. The committee report is something that is completely different from the fiscal framework that is going to be voted on. And the recommendations are not legally binding on amendments to the fiscal framework. There's no legislation that permits that 30 days later we can come back and amend the fiscal framework. That is what we were trying to impress. So today we're going to be, as the EFF, we're still waiting for the Speaker, of course, to respond to our letter to determine our course of action. But principally, it is the EFF and the Democratic Alliance and the Mkhonto Sizwe Party which have rejected both the report and the fiscal framework as it stands, because it's not representative of submissions of stakeholders which have rejected the VAT hikes.
So what stops the Speaker of Parliament from saying, in the National Assembly later today, let's vote on whether we adopt this report that contains these recommendations by ActionSA supported by the ANC and IFP, and then we move the vote on the budget to a later stage once we have the Finance Minister who's come back with a revised budget?
Look, I think there's no legislation that permits it. So the recommendations by ActionSA in the committee report do not have a legislative impact on the fiscal framework. The only mechanism to amend the fiscal framework, and you rightly said that we can amend it and then the minister has 2 days to revert back, are contained in the Money Bills Amendment Act. So the recommendation that says that 30 days must be given to National Treasury to come back with an alternative is not permissible by law. Like, there's no provision on it in any legislation. So the Speaker would have to rationalize to us on what basis is she doing that. And that's what we were asking the ActionSA member yesterday in Parliament. Okay, we hear your proposal. It might be progressive at face value, but legislatively, what permits this to be doable? So the proposal, if the Speaker were to come with a proposal of that nature, she'd have to rationalize it in law, and there's nothing that rationalizes that as we stand here today. So that is the challenge with ActionSA's proposal, and it's well-meaning, but it's not consequential in our view.
Okay, Sinawo Tambo, EFF Member of Parliament. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's bring in the DA now so you hear from them as well, because yesterday they also tabled officially their rejection of the budget that contains that VAT increase. Dr. Mark Burke is the DA spokesperson on finance. Dr. Burke, thank you for also making time for us. Good morning.
Clement, it's always good to be with you.
Yeah, so as the Democratic Alliance, maybe explain to our listeners, one, why you rejected this proposal by ActionSA, which has these recommendations that would end up seeing the removal of that 0.5 percentage hike, and why have you decided to reject the proposal?
Clement, my dentist often recommends to me that I should floss my teeth more, but it's not a legally binding contract between my dentist and I. It's a recommendation that I can discard at my leisure. It's the same problem with the flimsy proposal by ActionSA to include a recommendation in the report that legally is only able to do one of two things. It can accept the fiscal framework, which has a 1% VAT increase baked into it at the moment, or it could have chosen to amend that fiscal framework. ActionSA chose to accept the fiscal framework and make some non-binding recommendations in there. We could never support that. Either the fiscal framework had to be amended, or we say that we are comfortable with subjecting South Africans to more taxes that they cannot afford. And by the way, it's not just a VAT increase, it's also the bracket creep, meaning if the people that are employed in South Africa were lucky enough to get inflation or above inflation related increase in their salary, they will now be subject to higher taxation because they'll move into they'll move into a higher income threshold but stay in the same income tax bracket that they were in before. But maybe this is a very easy and less highbrow test for your listeners, and it's a simple question to ActionSA, as well as the ANC, as well as the IFP, all of whom voted for this report yesterday. Will their VAT decrease, increase, or stay the same come the 1st of next month? We all know the answer to that question. And the answer to that question is their VAT will increase. So the ActionSA was so successful in their flimsy recommendation. Why is it that that South Africans' VAT is increasing come the start of next month?
But ActionSA is explaining it differently, Dr. Burke. They're saying that their proposal is to remove the tax increase, right? That's, yes, it's a recommendation, but the finance minister has about 2 days, according to the law, to respond to any proposed amendment of that fiscal framework by the committee. So he could very well come, I don't know, he could very well come and say, yes, we couldn't find other options, hence the VAT stays. Or he could come and say, okay, we've looked at these proposals by ActionSA and we have actually found other ways to find this additional revenue. Therefore, we are going to remove this tax percentage increase.
Clement, I think there's perhaps a misunderstanding of the law, but I also don't want to construct a courtroom over the air. The 2 days that you're now referring to refers to when the fiscal framework was amended. The report that's now freely available online does not amend the fiscal framework. It accepts the fiscal framework and it makes some recommendations. If the fiscal framework is accepted, there is no requirement for the minister to take 2 days to report on that fiscal framework being accepted. If the fiscal framework is amended, which it was not, then, of course, the minister has 2 days to comment on it. So to conflate the fact that there might have been a need for the minister to comment, which now doesn't exist, over the course of 2 days, with an extension of 30 days, makes no legal or logical sense. They've constructed this idea to try and create a 30-day window of breathing room to come up with alternative ways not to punish South Africans more, when the ANC over 30 years hasn't been able to do so.
Okay, let me bring in Athol Trollip now, who is the ActionSA parliamentary leader, and I'll come back to you, Dr. Burke. Athol, it looks like the EFF and the DA are taking this position that you have now accepted this fiscal framework that contains this VAT percentage hike. And according to the law, at least how they understand, is that once you accept that, there's no requirement then for the minister to take those 2 days to go and amend it, because it wasn't amended in that committee meeting. It was accepted as is, with a condition that the minister goes and looks at your proposals. How do you see it? Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. First of all, we must accept that this is an unprecedented situation. We've been brought to this impasse by the fact that the GNU government, made up of a number of parties, including the DA, have not been able to table a budget that they can agree on. So we have this fiscal impasse, and it has to be resolved somewhere, somehow, because the longer that this uncertainty prevails in this country, the more it knocks our economy and our position globally. So what has happened here is that there's been an extraordinary amount of negotiations going on behind the scenes, including between the DA and the ANC. And the DA, ironically, have made a number of conditional demands. And apparently, some of the conditional demands were that they would support the VAT increase if they were given more authority and control over finances. Now, there's an allegation that there's a document to that effect. I haven't seen it, and I've challenged the ANC to release that document. But the fact of the matter is we have an impasse, and the budget is, or the fiscal framework is going to be voted on today in Parliament after it processed or progressed through the Standing Committee of Finance. Now, what happened there is that the 11 members on that committee, 6 members voted that it would progress on condition that the Treasury consider inputs from all stakeholders, including Parliament and the Standing Committee, to reassess the budget, because we believe that there is revenue out there, and if they adopt some of the expenditure reviews that have been tabled to no avail in the last 2 years in Parliament, that we can easily fill the 28 million rand shortfall if that and tax bracket increase is not taken into account. So that's what we've done. That was a commitment that the ANC made to us, and we will see what the minister has to say this afternoon in that regard.
So what? But so are you? So your vote then, as ActionSA, before you vote, is that going to be dependent on the finance minister who says, we have looked at the recommendations and we have found a way to readjust this budget to remove this 0.5 percentage point? Or because the time is not enough. This proposal was made yesterday. There's no way that the minister between last night and 2 p.m. today would have found ways to find that 28 billion rand based on your proposal. So what are you voting on today? Because when you vote for that fiscal framework as is, you're accepting a fiscal framework that still contains the VAT increase.
Clement, there are a whole number of votes that are still going to be taking place in Parliament until the Division of Revenue Act is passed in Parliament. And if the ANC doesn't fulfill its commitments, then we will reconsider our position when it comes to voting on the Division of Revenue Act. But here's the thing. You know, it's quite ironic that some political parties deem it their sole preserve to cooperate with the ANC, and when others do, they're called sellouts. The fact of the matter is that we're all South Africans. We need to fix this mess that we're in, and the mess that we're in is essentially a GNU mess, not our mess. So we're trying to fix this mess that has been presented to South Africa.
Yeah, let me ask Dr. Burke that. Dr. Burke, Athol refers to what you have said as the Democratic Alliance. He says when it's you as the DA who works with the ANC, then it's saving South Africa. But when it's ActionSA and other parties that work with the ANC, then you call them as sellouts or flip-floppers.
Well, 2 points there, Clement. But just before I jump into those 2 points, the honourable colleague was asked a few factual legal questions. He didn't answer a single one of them. It seems to me that they've now realized that between yesterday and today, they've got no legal standing. There's no protecting South Africans from the VAT increase, and he's dancing around it. But to your question of cooperation with the ANC, the first point is we never said things like, in 300 years we wouldn't speak to them. But their leader did say those words. And then, of course, they are speaking to them. The second point is we are, while cooperating with the ANC, extracting concessions to the benefit of South Africa. We're doing that with almost 100 seats in Parliament, and we're doing that on firm footing through years of experience. Now, my colleague used to be in the DA, and for that reason alone, I love him. But he's not a serious person. He's not good with mathematics. Just now he talks about 28 million when it's a 28 billion rand problem. Just earlier today he was in an interview talking about an 11 committee member meeting, and then he goes on to list 12 committee members. We're talking here about individuals that are simply not able to come to simple arithmetic. Never mind to understand the legal complexities of how they've sold out South Africans a vague ANC promise.
Dr. Burke, but as the DA yourselves, when you are saying that they are the ones that have sold out or that flip-flop, for instance, as the DA yourselves, you've also said you wouldn't work with the ANC, and yet you are.
Clement, I've said before that I stood across from our federal leader when he, before the last election, told international news that he could not rule out the possibility of having to work with the ANC if that would rescue South Africa. And we were taken to the media by other smaller parties because we said that. But we honestly gave South Africa that feedback, that this might be a viable option. And we were willing to take the pain associated with that honesty. Again, we never said things like never in 300 years would we work with them. We were a constructive opposition to them when we were in opposition, and we're now in a new era. But we never made crazy promises, only to flip-flop on them. And I'll point out here that yesterday in the committee meeting, the other honourable colleague from ActionSA started by saying they're going to amend the fiscal framework, and they were then strong-armed quite clearly by the ANC into changing it into a recommendation while accepting the fiscal framework. They flip-flopped within a day. Come on, man. These are not serious people.
Okay, so Dr. Burke, so if you're saying this is a new era for you guys as the Democratic Alliance, as you work with the ANC, why can't it be a new era for ActionSA as well that said they wouldn't work with the ANC? Also, help me understand this, because there's a number of times that John Steenhuisen has been asked this question of whether or not they would work with the ANC. For instance, in this case, this is how he responded to that question.
That's what the multi-party charter document says, that we've all committed to not doing deals with the ANC or the EFF. And I've signed that document on behalf of the DA, and that's the document. So it's not a debate. We've already done it. It's in black and white.
So he says there, that's a commitment that they've been made as the multi-charter coalition. Here's another time when he was asked about it. Just 1 second.
No, we don't want to be in government with the ANC, and that's precisely...
So that is out of the question.
No, it's precisely why we formed the multi-party charter. My job is to get the ANC out of government. I don't think we're going to solve the country's problems by having the same people who are responsible for the economic crisis, the social crisis, and the infrastructure crisis sitting around the table.
There's your leader, Dr. Burke. I've played you 2 different clips. I could play you more if we had time, where he says the commitment is to keep the ANC out of government. The commitment is not to work with the African National Congress. You guys have said that it's okay for you to turn around and say, oh, well, now we want to save South Africans. But it's not okay for ActionSA to do that?
Clement, I'm glad you're playing these clips because they relate to a promise we made up to the point of the election. We indicated there that we would not be doing deals outside of the multi-party charter in the lead up to the election. We never committed to what we would have to consider doing after the election. But I also hope that you'll play the Bloomberg clip before the election where our candidates were announced, and I was one of the candidates, and I sat across from our leader when he told the international media that this is not something he could rule out after the election. But again, we come back to another point here, which is when there's an agreement in place between multi-party charter members, and it's quite clear what that agreement entails and when it expires, and the legal amateurs that is the ActionSA party then misinterprets that and goes out shouting about it to the world. We can't but look at that and say these aren't serious people.
Yeah, and I must say that second clip that I played was from Biz. We'll find the what do you say? The Bloomberg clip as well that you're speaking about. But I will try play the listeners some extra clips of John Steenhuisen where he was making a commitment that they don't want to work with the ANC. I just get surprised that when it's ActionSA that has said we'll never work with the ANC and now they changed their mind, now they're seen as flip-floppers or sellouts, but the DA is allowed to actually make that about turn because, we're in a new era here. This was before elections. Doesn't make sense to me. Let me know your thoughts. Give me a call on 011-883-0702. You can send your WhatsApps on 0727021702. It's 10:32. Let's get the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. Fiso, hi.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand saying the DA has placed itself in an unenviable position as the clock fast approaches 2 o'clock for Parliament's 2025 budget votes. EWN has heard leaked audio of both the President and his Deputy Paul Mashatile addressing ANC caucus members last night. Ramaphosa says he told the DA leader John Steenhuisen that his party has hit a dead end and it's now up to them to find their way out. SARS has again refused to be drawn into the politics of taxes amid renewed calls for the implementation of a wealth tax. A tax on the highly rich has often been touted as an alternative to burdening poorer households in a bid to bridge National Treasury's budget deficit. SARS again fielded questions about plans for a possible wealth tax yesterday when the authority announced its 2024-25 revenue outcomes. And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has been attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Zelensky has called on its international allies to mount pressure on Moscow to stop its invasion. He says the drone strike has resulted to a power outage that's affected thousands of people. Those are the headlines. This EWN and more at 10 or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
Very good morning. We start in the city of Johannesburg. We've got some heavy delays, unusual pressure on the N1 North. This is from Rivonia Road heading to the Beklu interchange. Definitely an incident along that route, so please expect delays in the opposite direction. Nothing beyond 5-minute long delays. It's actually caused by onlookers in the opposite direction, so I must urge you to remain focused on your route. Witkoppen Road, just parallel to the N1 carriageway. That's in the Polshof region. Quite slow eastbound going past St. Peter's. It's then the nation's capital, Willow Acres, seeing some heavy pressure. N4 West, nothing beyond 10-minute long delays. This is until you get to Solomon Mahlangu Drive. Pretoria CBD, quite slow. It's Johannes Ramukwase Street, Blue Street, as well as Boom Street, all heading west to Eskom Bahlele Drive. And in the city of Ekurhuleni, free-flowing traffic. Please continue driving with care, and I'll have your next traffic update in 30 minutes or as it happens.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
702.
The Clement Manyathela Show.
Let's walk the talk.
25 minutes before 11 o'clock. Let me give Athol Trollip an opportunity to respond to Dr. Burke, and then I'm going to go to your calls and WhatsApps as well. Yeah, Athol, your response to what Dr. Burke said there before the headlines?
Yeah, thanks very much, Clement. First of all, he was at pains to say he didn't want to conduct a court case on air, and then proceeded down a whole lot of legal avenues. I'm not going to do that, and neither am I going to be spurious and make disparaging remarks about him and anyone else. You know, politics is, especially in South Africa, it's about working together, especially after the last election where voters gave no political party a majority. We have to work together. This is our country. And if you have a haughty, arrogant attitude about working together, you're not going to get things right. You know, Mr. Burke said that I might have got the maths wrong about the 11 people on the committee. That might be. I was at the airport at around 5:30 in the morning. But let me just say that there were 11 people on that, members of Parliament on that committee. 6 voted for our recommendation and 5 opposed it. Now, the DA, for example, did not ever speak to us about supporting their proposals. And that just shows how haughty they have become. The ANC spent days talking to us. We had a number of conditions that we said needed to be considered. And one of the main conditions was that SARS needs to be adequately funded to collect the almost 800 billion rand that is on the table for collection. Now, SARS has already just shown that they collected a record amount of revenue last year, around 1.8 trillion rand. SARS have shown that they're the best revenue collection machine in this country, and we believe that the 28 billion rand that is required to fill the budget gap can easily be found by SARS and by implementing expenditure reviews. So we are prepared to do what is necessary to get this budget passed, but we have said from the beginning that we must cut the fat and leave that. And our position to the ANC was simply that. Cut the fat, fix your expenditure, bad expenditure habits, go and help SARS collect the revenue shortfall and leave the VAT alone. And what can happen in the future, if this goes through with a VAT increase of 0.5% this year, there isn't a budget adjustment that lies ahead, and we can come with new legislation around taxation. It's not the end of the world, but this is an unprecedented, unique situation that we find ourselves in now.
Okay, and just lastly, because I want to understand, what are you expecting later today during the voting? Are you expecting the finance minister to come and already tell you that we are going to start work that adjusts that budget to remove that 0.5 percentage hike, or are you going to vote for the fiscal framework as it is with the promise from the minister that we're going to make adjustments?
Clement, we're certainly going to expect the finance minister to make comments about how they're going to fill that gap. But what's going to happen this afternoon is that it's not only 11 members in the Standing Committee of Finance that are going to be voting. It's going to be all 400 members of Parliament. And there are a number of other political parties in and outside of the GNU that have indicated that they share our position and the position of the ANC after our negotiations. So we will see this afternoon where the chips will fall and how the political parties will vote.
Yeah.
And then you will not be able to cast aspersions on any one party because the whole of Parliament would then have voted.
Okay, Athol Trollip, ActionSA Parliamentary Leader, let me thank you. Thank you for making time for us. Dr. Burke, I'll give you the last words here. And I'm trying to understand, because I absolutely get the point that you as the DI making together with the EFF, that at the end of the day, there's 2 things that are required in a finance committee when you're discussing a fiscal framework. Either you accept it or you amend it. As it stands, it hasn't been amended. There is a recommendation, and the rules don't speak to some conditional acceptance of sorts. So what happens then later today? Is there an option for the Speaker of Parliament to say, here's a report, here are the proposals, I am going to postpone today's vote on the fiscal framework until there are amendments that are made? Is there an option for that?
I'll answer that question in a moment, Clement. I'll just add, and I don't think South Africans want to engage in a lot of he said, she said, but I've sent your producers an article dated 28 March, which you would know preceded the 29 May election by 2 months, where the headline for that article from Burke was, South African opposition DA would only do ANC deal to avert doomsday, and then goes on to explain. Now, you mentioned earlier that our federal leader said that he doesn't want to work with the ANC. That's right. That's a nuanced statement. We didn't want to work with the ANC, and quite frankly, we still don't. But it's something that we might have had to consider and then did consider.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas ActionSA quite clearly said never in 300 years would they work with the ANC. There's a distinction and there's nuance between those two statements. But we are on the record with reputable international news agencies of our nuanced position. Now, that framing leads to an answer to your question, which is what will we do today?
Yeah,
Well,
before you do, let me just respond to that as well, Dr. Burke,
Sure.
because I think you are telling me about an article on the 28th of March 2024. My argument to you around that is that you were realizing, as the DA at that time, probably through your own polls or polls that are being shown outside of the Democratic Alliance, that you're not going to be able to win the elections with a majority. So that's a time when any political party, when they realize what their support looks like, they start forming some kind of deals. But before that, I've played you two clips of John Steenhuisen saying, we don't want that. Even the anchor said, so that's out of the question. And he says, precisely. So before that, you were very clear, just like ActionSA, that you don't want to work with the ANC. But closer to the elections last year, because you're realizing through probably your own polls or polls that are done outside the DA that you're not going to get an overwhelming majority, you're beginning now to change tune because you see where the voting is going to go.
The simple point that you're making is right. We would have probably been informed by data and intelligence that would have dictated a certain direction. But the simple reality is also this. 2 months before the election, we started making South Africans aware of that reality. So the voter had the ability to include that in the assessment of who to vote for. Whereas ActionSA supporters up to this point would have probably been, in my estimation, the few that they have, capitalist-minded, free market, right of center individuals that would have never conceived that if they gave ActionSA 6 seats in Parliament, ActionSA would use that to enable the worst parts of the ANC to ram through a VAT increase. So the fact is, we gave our voters a choice. They didn't give their voters a choice. And yes, we do make decisions with data that supplements how we make those decisions. But we also try and at all points be honest and transparent to our voters and update them when our thinking has changed while honouring existing agreements like we did with the multi-party charter, which said that we would not do deals before the election with other parties. So I want to be quite clear on the facts, and I do want to encourage that when we engage with the media on these issues, that we look at a balance of information, not just the ones that feed into, because the risk that we run is exactly what's happened here. We take a party that has 6 seats out of 400 in Parliament at their word when they're not to be trusted, and then misinformation starts permeating into society, and people actually believe that this flimsy recommendation has any legal standing, whereas any serious person will tell you that it does not. But I do want to answer your other question, Clement, is what happens this afternoon in Parliament? Well, I hope that reasonable, like-minded parties that want to protect South Africans from tax increases will come together and vote with more than 200 votes against a report that is not amended, against a report that has no protection against the 1% VAT increase over 2 years, as well as tax brackets that stay the same. So, Clement, we're going to be fighting this thing out in Parliament this afternoon and in the 3 bills that are to come in coming months. But it's quite clear that the conversation we should be having is not about ActionSA. It's about what parts of the ANC is being enabled through this. Because while we were willing, as always, to negotiate with our counterparts with an open posture, we were trying to extract concessions to get the economy firing so that people can actually find work and we have more tax revenue next year. All of that is now up in the air because the commitment that the ActionSA was hoodwinked over. And again, I simply cannot say this enough. These are not serious people, but can we please chat about the serious problem, which is the ANC?
Well, the ANC says you might as well walk away from this GNU. President Cyril Ramaphosa, I was listening to a recording of him last night addressing the ANC caucus, and he says the DA has said before that if the ANC works with other parties, that's going to be the end of the GNU. Are you going to walk away from this GNU? Because the ANC clearly is working with other parties, in this case, ActionSA.
It's an important principle for me, Clement, to always answer the questions from the media. In this case, I'm simply not the decision maker. Our federal executive will be meeting over this. They will chart a way forward. It would not be right for me to make a pronouncement on that, but I also don't have the information to make a pronouncement on that. But what I can tell you is what's happened here has been a repeat theme of bad faith negotiation, of constantly threatening the worst outcome and then going to seek for partnership outside of the GNU, a concept which, by the way, South Africans were very excited about 9 months ago, a concept that we've remained committed to despite tactics such as signing into law bills that passed under the 6th Parliament by a 7th administration president. We've tried to be a reasonable partner here. I can't speak to what will happen in coming days, but I can say we're super disappointed.
And you've been disappointed so many times, Dr. Burke, where you've threatened to walk away and you never did, because it does serve you as the DA to be in this GNU. That's why you've never left. When the Bella Act was signed, when NHI, when Expropriation Act, and I can go on and on, you still stayed, even though you've defined those as red lines.
Yes, and I think we might have been bringing a water pistol to a gunfight, but this budget is an equality of arms. The ANC controls 39% of the seats in Parliament. And this is always going to be a backstop to try and oppose some of these radical policies that will undermine economic growth. We were always going to insist within the budget that items are included there that gets the economy going. And were we not able to speak sense to the ANC, were we not able to start chipping away at their massive embezzlement network, we would have had to use the budget. And of course now that's what's happening. And of course now there's tension as a result. But that will not deter us from doing what's right.
Okay.
And this budget will be telling on who is trying to protect South Africans and who's trying to punish them with more tax.
All right, Dr. Mark Burke, the DA spokesperson on finance, thank you so much for making time for us. 2 p.m. is going to be a defining moment. If the DA votes against this proposal, President Cyril Ramaphosa can be heard in that clip last night saying, well, they will be defining themselves outside of the GNU. He said today is the DA's choice. If it's going to vote against this report or proposal by ActionSA, then there are going to be consequences for that. I want to tell you how weird politicians are, because they always want to talk about fairness. Or I played a clip of John Steenhuisen categorically saying that it's out of the question. They don't want to work with the ANC. There's no way they would want to bring the ANC in, right? And then Dr. Burke got off the line. In fact, he told us he's got an interview with with one of the channels on television, and then we let him go. And then he came back on and then sent us this article. I think he wanted to go check the article from Bloomberg where John Steenhuisen has actually said we would consider that working the ANC to save South Africa from a doomsday coalition. But if you look at the date of that report, it was closer to the elections. This is when political parties now know where their support base is. So, of course, as a political party, you're going to change your messaging. You're going to change your messaging. Now it's no longer we will never. Now it's we're not ruling it out. That's what politics is. So if the DA is allowed to make a flip-flop like that, why can't as ActionSA be allowed to make that flip-flop? Why is it that when it's the DA that is choosing to work with the so-called enemy, it's okay because to them it's saving South Africa? If it's the other parties, then they're seen as sellouts. That doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't. And the DA always wants to try and justify their relationship with the ANC. But anybody else who works with the ANC, you are the enemy. That's crazy. And now they want to question this proposal, right, in Parliament. They want to question this proposal and say there's no legal basis. That's exactly what other parties were saying about the statement of intent, which is what governs the relationship between the DA and the ANC and other parties in the GNU. So they were justifying the statement of intent, which has no constitutional or legal basis. But here's something else. And I know these are different. This is a parliamentary process. I'm just giving you an example of when people are questioning things and their legal basis, the DA is able to want to justify that. Right? But no, other parties can't justify the ways that they go on political matters. That's hypocrisy. It's 10 minutes before 11 o'clock.
Bongani Bingwa, 702 Breakfast.
Weekday mornings, 6 to 9.
How are you dealing with the complexities of tax evasion?
We really rely on the diligence of our staff and increasingly the deployment of data science and AI to help us detect the risk early. But the greatest concern that I have, Bongani, is the proliferation of tax crime that is not only perpetrated by a single entity, a taxpayer or company, but by syndicates that are often cross-border.
Edward Kiswede.
Mngani Bingwa, 6 to 9.
On 702.
Unlike other assets built on belief, gold is built on reality. Rare, enduring, and demanded globally, gold is a trusted asset for all. With gold rising 30% in the past year, it again proves to be the ultimate store of value. Buy gold with the market leaders at the Scoin Shop, online or in stores nationwide. T's and C's apply.
Make soccer season legendary with Hollywood Bets. Aziz Shagay, Let's Play takes your disky passion to the next dimension. Light up the games with your best bet slip and stand a chance to win your share of 2 million rand in prizes, including a brand new Toyota Fortuner. Bet a minimum of 10 rand on any soccer fixture to qualify. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bets supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp help to 076 675 0710.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
9 minutes before 11 o'clock. Let's hear from you now on 011-883-0702. Mushere, let's start with you in Pretoria West. What are your thoughts on what
Clement, look, as long as we, the people on the ground, we don't give one political party marching orders, these political parties, of course, they'll make concession where they want to appease their constituents. DA last month, they were indicating that as long as ANC can consider whatever that the proposal they put forward, they're going to allow the issue of tax because it's a give and take situation. Now, all of a sudden, they're pretending to be not wanting the tax to be increased. Whereas they were mentioning the Bella a number of issues that they want to make their constituency happy to say that this is the negotiations that we have made. Now we can consider the issue of tax. It's not that they don't want tax to be increased. They want to appease their voters. Until such time as voters, we give one political party marching order to say this is the direction that we want. This is what we're going to be subjected to as citizens of this country.
All right, Moshere in Pretoria West, thank you very much for that. I think when we spoke to the DA's federal member of the federal executive the other day, Karabakakau, she said, we told the ANC that we want the Expropriation Act, that bill needs to go back to Parliament. Let's amend this so that it's nil. You take away the nil compensation and you say just and equitable. They mentioned the devolution of powers the Western Cape must have. This is something the DA has been pushing for so long, and the national government has been refusing to concede to that. And that's where the ANC says has been the problem. The ANC says the DA is willing to support a 0.5 percentage hike. They are. And I bet you, had the ANC conceded to some of the DA's demands, the DA was going to find a reason to come and explain to you that, oh yeah, now this is to save South Africa. So the people who said we care about the poor will never support a 0.5 percentage hike. I bet you, had the ANC conceded to their demands, they were going to come back to you and say, yes, we are going to support this 0.5 percentage hike, but they're going to find a way to justify it. We had no other choice. If we don't support it, there's going to be consequences. Oh no, we are supporting it because if this Expropriation Act is amended, this bill is amended then to be just and equitable and not nil in the long term, that's going to benefit you. If you really care about the poor, there must be nothing that you're willing to take in exchange for you to vote for a 0.5 percentage point. And yet the discussions they've had with the ANC, and this is what the president said in that recording last night, is that they were prepared to vote for it. They were prepared to vote for a 0.5 percentage point as long as it's in exchange for what they demand. But other people can't change their minds. Crazy. John, you're calling from Davidton. Hi.
Hello. Clement, you believe the DA at your own perils, especially the poor Africans. The DA will never work for your interest and my interest. They are just trying to use other political parties for their own interest. Actually, they like you are saying, it's more convenient than ideology. The DA will use this government of national unity to pursue their own interest. And they'll use this one, the tax and whatever, just as a tool to bargain for other things that will naturally benefit black people. Look, we have been so much disadvantaged. It's just the ANC also cannot be trusted. If there was another party that we can actually trust, and it's unfortunate because the ANC will never work with MK.
Oh, it's just gone there. Do you want to bring him back? I don't know what happened there. His line just got cut. Let's go to these WhatsApps.
Clement, it seems there is a difference between the DA and the ActionSA, because Mr. Herman Mashaba once said that his members, he had a referendum where his members say that they don't want to work with the ANC. He said he consulted with his members first. So here's the question. Did he consult with his members now? David?
Yeah, and David, that's why even then we criticize Herman Mashaba. I think Bongani even spoke to him on the show and said, you are flip-flopping. But they found a way to justify it. My point is, you can't be a party that accuses the other party of flip-flopping when you yourself has flip-flopped. That's weird. If another party has changed its mind about a particular political position and you criticize them but you are allowed to change your mind and flip-flop, that doesn't make sense to me.
Clement, Athol Trollip is living in some dream world. The ANC will go back on their word, 100%. We're having a VAT hike. We must all just prepare for it. And ActionSA will have learnt a hard lesson in politics.
Yeah, and they must pay that price if that's the case. They have said that if the ANC comes back and doesn't amend their budget, ActionSA is not going to vote for that budget. But let's wait and see. I just got a letter now so this is procedural irregularities in adoption of so this is a letter that was sent once again to the Speaker of Parliament. I thought maybe it's the Speaker of Parliament who has responded to the EFF letter, which is going to really have consequences for what happens later today, because the EFF want the withdrawal of that fiscal framework report. But yeah, I think they're still waiting then for the Speaker to respond to their letter. She hasn't responded just yet.
Hi, Clement Jabuchilwane in Mkondo. To answer your question, I will say that the DA thinks that they are the only ones who are given a God-given right to flip-flop. Others don't have a right to do so. Thank you, Jabuchilwane Nimko.
The Midday Report.
Weekdays,
12 to 1.
If the GNU does break down, or if the DA leaves the GNU, but the GNU continues to function with the fewer small parties, what are the implications for the currency and for the markets?
I think the implications would be that the rand would depreciate. The fear would return that we would have populist economic policies. If the DA should fall out of the GNU, I think a lot of that confidence will disappear, and as a consequence, people will start losing hope.
Dr. Azar Jameen.
The Midday Report
with Mandy Wiener.
12 to 1 on 702.
702.
Do you believe every child deserves a chance at a brighter future? Gifted Child Children's Home does too, and they need your help. Your support can make a huge difference in the lives of these kids. Whether it's a small donation or some of your time, every bit counts. WhatsApp or call 081 357 6091 to find out how you can lend a hand. Gifted Child Children's Home, because every child deserves love and hope.
PG Glass Repair, PG Glass Replace.
I'm Delani, PG Glass Technician. Is that a chip? With our advanced tools and high-tech equipment, we can repair it.
World-class repair technology, only at PG Glass. Visit pg.co.za.
It's 11 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good morning, I'm Sfiso Zulu. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand, saying DA has placed itself in an unenviable position ahead of Parliament's 2025 budget votes. EWN has heard leaked audio of both the President and his Deputy Paul Mashatile addressing ANC caucus members last night. Ramaphosa says he told DA leader John Steenhuisen that his party has hit a dead end and it's now up to them to find their way out. The two parties have deadlocked over the budget policy statement, with some in the ANC calling for the DA to leave if it can't support a GNU budget. Tsidi Madia has more.
Never disrupt your adversaries while they're busy making mistakes. This is the cautionary tale ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa told members of his party as he made it clear that he believed the DA has already defined itself outside of the GNU. Ramaphosa shared insights on his conversation with John Steenhuisen, including criticizing the DA for wanting to be both in government and its opposition at the same time. The president says the DA must take a decision today which will define where it stands. His deputy Paul Mashatile says if the DA refuses to support the budget, then it doesn't deserve to be in the GNU. He's equated this to the party firing itself, further questioning how it would enjoy implementing programs from a budget it opposed. Parliament's vote on the budget this afternoon will be seen as a crucial test for the GNU. That session will kick off at 2 p.m. Tsidi Madia, Eyewitness News.
Economist Dale McKinley says the ANC's comments that value-added tax will be reduced if the economy improves is more political than realistic government policy. The party's General Secretary Fihla Mbalula yesterday said the VAT hike doesn't have to be permanent. From the 1st of May, there's been a proposal that value-added tax increase for the fourth time in the country's history by a 0.5 percentage point. The Value-Added Tax Act was first introduced to South Africa in 1991 at 10%. It was increased to 14% in 1993, then 15% in 2018. However, it has never dropped. McKinley says it's unlikely.
Of course, it's absolutely possible. Budgets are produced every year, so one can take away VAT, increase VAT, or make these proposals anyway, whether they fly. I think, though, that this isn't part of the negotiations gambit where they're basically trying to get the DA on board and say, listen, come with us with the 0.5% increase in the next 2 years, and then we'll do away with it. So my sense is that, of course, it's possible, but it's unlikely.
SARS has again refused to be drawn into the politics of taxes amid renewed calls for the implementation of a wealth tax. A tax on the highly rich has often been touted as an alternative to burdening poorer households in a bid to bridge National Treasury's budget deficit. SARS again fielded questions about plans for a possible wealth tax when the authority announced yesterday its 2024-25 tax revenue outcomes. Sinawo Tambo has the details.
Wealth tax is essentially a tax based on the total value of a person's assets. It's usually charged every year based on the value of assets like property, cars, and investments. Wealth tax is often used by politicians as the Robin Hood of taxes, which take money from the rich and give it to the poor. But some economists say they're too expensive to manage and don't bring in much revenue. SARS Commissioner Edward Kisweta says the tax authority hasn't taken a position on the matter.
SARS is required to advise the minister, who is then principally accountable for deciding on tax policy.
He says the country does in fact have stealth wealth taxes such as the luxury car tax, capital gains tax, municipal rates based on the value of property and estate duty. Nogukhanya Mdambo, Eyewitness News.
And Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia has been attacking Ukrainian energy infrastructure. Zelensky has called on allies to mount pressure on Moscow to halt its invasion. He says the drone strike has resulted to a power outage affecting thousands of people. Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry says it intercepted and destroyed 93 Ukrainian drones overnight, mostly over the Kursk region. Russia and Ukraine have stepped up aerial attacks even as US President Donald Trump pushes the Kremlin and Kyiv to agree to a ceasefire after more than 3 years of costly fighting. Following separate meetings with US officials, the White House says both Ukraine and Russia had agreed to develop measures for implementing an agreement to ban strikes against energy facilities of Russia and Ukraine. However, both have since accused each other of violating the shaky agreements. Gold is trading at $3,125 $67 an ounce. The rand is at 18.53 to the dollar, 23.93 to the pound, 19.99 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $74.50 a barrel.
In Sandton, we have an incident on the N1 North. This is Midrand bound if you're coming from four ways. There's 20-minute long delays stretching as far back as Winnie Mandela Drive on-ramp. So you do need to be patient and then look out for some pressure causing delays. This is in the city of Ekurhuleni. N3 heading north, just approaching the Kelulis interchange, while in Halfway House, a slight snag on Jonik Boulevard near the R101.
A partly cloudy day in store for Gauteng with isolated thunder showers expected. The temperatures will peak at highs between 22 and 24 degrees. The top story in EWN this hour. President Cyril Ramaphosa has drawn a line in the sand, saying the DA has placed itself in an unenviable position ahead of Parliament's 2025 budget vote.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela
On 702.
Let's walk the talk. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app.
DSTV channel 856.
92.7 and 106 FM.
Seven minutes after 11 o'clock. Dumelang, welcome to the third hour, the third and final hour of the Clement Manyathela Show. Thank you for staying with us here on 702. I think, let's be patient. I think at 2 p.m. we're going to get a sense of what things look like. Who knows? Maybe by the end of today we'll know whether this GNU is going to be reconfigured or not. But the issue here, I think, right, and this is my assessment of what's happening here, and you could very well see it differently. These are uncharted territories, right? You've got ActionSA that's made a proposal that is supposed to see the removal of a tax increase. Forget what the DA and EFF are the impression they're trying to create. That ActionSA has voted for a VAT increase. They didn't. They have made a proposal that would see the removal of that VAT increase. Right? Now, the issue now that the DA and EFF are using to try and challenge this proposed report, because ActionSA says to the finance minister, go back. These are the options you must look at in order for you to get this 28 billion rand or so in additional revenue. We don't have to increase VAT. So the ball is now in the court of the finance minister to come back with a revised budget that doesn't include VAT, while considering these options by ActionSA. So the first thing here to know is that ActionSA didn't vote for a VAT increase. They voted for a report that proposes the removal of a VAT increase. That's the first thing. The second thing you need to understand about the situation is that the EFF and the DA are, and I think rightly so, are raising concern about the procedure from yesterday in the Finance Committee. Because procedurally, in fact, according to the law, when you're in the Finance Committee, there's a fiscal framework on the table. There are two options. Either you accept it or you amend it. In this case, neither happened. In fact, instead of accepting it or amending it, there was a conditional acceptance where ActionSA says, we're going to accept this fiscal framework, but on condition that the finance minister is going to come back with a better option that doesn't include VAT. And it's on that basis that the EFF says, we cannot go that way because that is not according to the rules. We have to either accept or amend. In this case, there's no amendment, but there's some conditional acceptance. And the law doesn't provide for a conditional acceptance. Either you accept or you don't, and you amend it. Now, what's going to happen in Parliament today at 2 p.m. is that the members of Parliament have to vote on this conditional acceptance. This report proposed by ActionSA that says, Finance Minister, go and look at other options. But here's the challenge. When you get into that parliament and you vote, if you vote to accept the budget, then there is nothing in law that provides for the finance minister to go and make the changes. That's another issue that the DA and the EFF are now raising, is when that parliament votes at 2 p.m., they're going to vote for a fiscal framework that has not been amended. Because remember, it's only a proposal that ActionSA has put forward. It's not an amendment. So at 2 p.m. when they vote, they're going to vote on this proposal by ActionSA that sends the finance minister back to the drawing table. But according to the rules, today, once you accept that fiscal framework, and as it stands now, that fiscal framework, because it hasn't been amended, it includes that VAT increase, then tough. The VAT increase may come in on the 1st of May. And the finance minister, even if the finance minister comes back a week or 2 weeks later and says, hey, there's nothing we can do, guys. It's still a 0.5% percentage hike. We couldn't find the additional 28 billion when based on the proposals from ActionSA. Then ActionSA and all the other parties would have voted for the VAT increase. But the ActionSA has chosen to take the ANC's word here. They've chosen, whether wrongly or rightly, they've chosen to believe that the ANC will respect their word, that we will go back and rework the budget. But the question now is, if they vote today for this fiscal framework as it stands, how are they going to justify getting the finance minister to go and rework it? Because procedurally and constitutionally, once you accept that fiscal framework, there is no provision for the finance minister to go and rework it. I think the possible option here is that the Speaker of Parliament postpones today's vote. But then again, is that allowed in terms of the rules? I'm not sure. But maybe the better option is the Speaker of Parliament gets there and says, we're postponing today's vote because we want to give the finance minister at least 2 days to respond to the proposal by ActionSA, and then we'll take it from there. Is that how things are going to unfold? You don't know. I don't know. You never know with this GNU. But we'll find out at 2 p.m. It's 12 minutes now after 11 o'clock. Time for our Listener's Choice feature.
Burning questions.
Insightful answers.
Listener's Choice.
With Clement Manyathela.
So on our Listener's Choice feature today, we are looking at this U.S. refugee status. One of our listeners has asked that we bring in an expert who can explain this U.S. refugee status. Remember, U.S. President Donald Trump signed an order to help the Afrikaner community from South Africa resettle in the U.S. Following those claims of discrimination, land confiscation, or persecution on the Afrikaner community in the country. Now, the latest on this issue, before I bring in the guest, the latest on this issue is that the U.S. President Donald Trump's administration is now planning to turn office spaces in Pretoria into temporary refugee centers so that they can consider this more than 8,000 applications from the white Afrikaners who want to resettle in America. So I saw the New York Times reporting that based on the documents that they have seen, under phase 1 of this program, the United States will be deploying multiple teams to convert commercial space in Pretoria at their offices into ad hoc refugee centers. Or maybe it's going to be commercial space, not even their offices. I don't know what this ad hoc refugee centers will do. I don't know if that means now the people who claim to be persecuted in South Africa can go live in these refugee centers until the U.S. then admits them in America. But according to the New York Times, about 8,200 requests have been received. These are people expressing interest in resettling in the U.S. And so far, the U.S. has identified only about 100 Afrikaners who could be approved for refugee status. So only about 100 so far seem to be the ones that will be approved out of the 8,200. Let's bring in Craig Smith now, who is an immigration lawyer at Craig Smith and Associates. If you've got some questions about this, maybe you considering taking up this offer, you want to know what to do, give us a call or send us a WhatsApp voice note. Craig, thank you so much for making time for us. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Clement.
So let's first look at how the US maybe defines refugee status and what are the normal processes that the US follows when they are dealing with refugees.
Sure. Look, the starting point is that way back after the Second World War, when millions of people were displaced, the world effectively got together after the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in 1951, there was a Convention for Refugees in which the definition of refugee still remains intact. The US, just like South Africa, adopts the same definition, which is to the tune of, and it relates to persecution. It says those individuals who are outside of their country of nationality, who have a well-founded fear of persecution as a result of race, religion, nationality, political opinion, or a social group who feel that they're being persecuted, may apply for refugee status. So what America does is they add the rights of the President of the United States in certain circumstances to carve out a group that he would consider to be eligible and make a sort of a special law, which we now know is an executive order, to allow for a group, in his opinion, that warrant refugee status. So the difference in terms of all the Western world and Middle East, the rest of the world, all adopt, in essence, the same definition. However, the president has these rights to make regulations or make executive orders to allow for those who are in their country of origin, just like we're talking about the Afrikaner group, who are in the country of their own nationality, who have now been identified by the president to apply for refugee status. Now, you must remember, there's a definition between an asylum seeker and a refugee. An asylum seeker is one of those individuals who applies for refugee status but has not yet received refugee status or has been refused. However, refugee status is where they have applied and qualify. So it's a lot more onerous. What the executive order has done is it's essentially set out that if you fall within this specific group.
And how do they define that group, Craig?
Okay. So they define that group as Afrikaners who have suffered racial discrimination. So racial discrimination falls within the ground of refugee status, and they would therefore have the opportunity to apply. President Trump has allowed these people now to go to refugee centers and make application, not just for asylum, but actually fully fledged refugee status in their country of origin. And that's where we are at the moment. If I may say, it's still in its very tentative stages because the Secretary of Homeland Security, Kirsty Noem, this is all the political side and the administrative process, has to still build a plan. It has to get approved by Trump. Before they start this process, they call it Mission South Africa, in order to obviously implement this process. Coming to the second part of your question is what would be the processes? So there will be a plan of action. There will be law. There will be rules and regulations, and it will result in those parties, individuals within South Africa. They would have to effectively apply for for refugee status, in which they'd have to go through quite a lot of vetting. They would have to go through security processes to ensure that they are not criminals. They will go through a medical screening process. They will go through a process on the merits. And here's a difficult one.
Yeah.
Is it just if you Afrikaans and you can show historically there was an issue of racial discrimination that you feel is material, will that be condoned? Will that be accepted? Or how strict or wide will the U.S. missions apply this executive order? Because if they do want to make a wide definition, you are going to have many refugees qualifying.
Yeah, and for me, because when I looked at the requirements, at least looking at the US laws, you need extensive documentation. You need proof of persecution as well. Is there an instance here? And I think that's going to make it difficult, Craig, because what proof of persecution, how many of the 8,000 people who were told have applied are able to say, oh, look, I've actually been persecuted in this way, and then they meet that criteria. So what I'm trying to figure out is, could we look at a way where the U.S. administration then widens what is expected for refugees to be able to meet that threshold, so they make it quite easier, as opposed to say, give us the proof that you've been persecuted? Because if you are still enjoying braais here and having so much fun, looking happy in South Africa, it's going to be difficult to then get there and say, oh, I'm a refugee, I'm being persecuted. You've just enjoyed a wonderful time in your farm having braais with your family.
Yes. I think you've hit the nail on the head, Clement. The issue here is has this whole process been politicized by the president? Because remember, underpinning this executive order has been the criticism that America has of South Africa in participating or effectively fronting the attendance in the International Court of Justice last year about, with the Israeli Palestinian / Hamas war. Why did we not side with Israel? So could we be punished? Could we be punished because they mention the Expropriation Act and arbitrary expropriation of property, which is factually false as would be as an issue, because no property has been expropriated in such a manner without compensation. In fact, I don't think there have been any land expropriations yet. So the question is, if they're trying to punish South Africa, and the relationships are obviously sour, they can, as you suggest, they could make it a very wide decision. And the applicant for asylum, we call it an asylum seeker, attends on this ad hoc refugee center in Pretoria, and they speak about, well, what is racial discrimination? Do they say, oh, well, I didn't get into university, or I didn't qualify for a specific position in the employment sector? How far do you go? But if it is the mission of the US, it's their underlying intention or non-stated intention, and they apply a wide definition, say, okay, are you Afrikaans? Let's just double check you are Afrikaans. Let's see your birth certificate and your history. And yes, you are Afrikaans. And ignore the merits of the racial discrimination, and they just get a free pass. Or will they, and should they, which they should, if they are a signatory to international law, they should actually consider the asylum seeker would have an obligation on a balance of probabilities to show he or she has been racially discriminated and effectively persecuted in South Africa. And I don't think it would pass the muster if you said, look, I didn't find a job, or I missed out on this opportunity, I didn't make this sports team or whatever, and I'm an Afrikaans-speaking person. Well, if Mission South Africa and the American politicians and missions want to fast-track this, they will do it, and they will do it in a very quick time.
Yeah. Okay. And then I want to give some listeners an opportunity here, in fact, to ask some questions. So you can call us on 011-883-0702 if you're also trying to understand more about this U.S. refugee status. We're trying to explain it to you with Craig Smith, who's an immigration lawyer at Craig Smith and Associates. Let's start with Gaurelo, actually, who's calling us from Pretoria, who's got a question for us. Gaurelo, good morning.
Morning, yeah. Look, I tend to look at it very simply. Donald Trump wants to save white people in South Africa, and that's his intention. I mean, the American embassy issued, in Pretoria issued a communique saying that this is for Afrikaner initially, and then later they said all descendants of European settlers. That's the wording they used. Now, it seems to me that the intention is to save white people. It doesn't make sense to me that they need any stringent criteria, because then, exactly what would the criteria be? At the heart of it is whether you're white and South African. That should be enough. Secondly, which I think is quite a scary prospect, in fact, is whether they do things like credit checks and so on. In other words, could people who are facing danger for debts or indebtedness in South Africa, who are under financial pressure, find this as an escape valve where they leave their debt here and run off to the States through this free pass? Because essentially, Donald Trump's political aims is to save white people, and that's who he sees as being persecuted. So it doesn't make sense that he could be stringent about it, otherwise he might not as well have it.
So he'll open it and relax the requirements for refugee. I hear you, Kaurel in Pretoria. Thanks. Yeah, Craig, your thoughts on that?
Yes, we touched on that, Clement. Essentially, how loose is this test going to be applied? We know the test is a test that has been applied for decades and decades. And it's the same for all members of these various refugee instruments. So now, as I think his name was Kabela, he says, well, America comes to South Africa, and I think we can't ignore the politicization and Elon Musk. Elon Musk said he has been previously racially discriminated, and America comes and sort of they turn the law, they turn the tables on the South African government or for the rest of the world. Remember, they've blocked refugees coming into America. So there's an executive order on that, and now there's an executive order that is promoting Afrikaners who've been racially discriminated. So you get the feeling that Donald Trump wants to prove a point. He's not happy with South Africa appearing in the International Court of Justice. So I think he wants to make the point. I think he wants to give white South Africans, it doesn't matter how big or small the group is, but he wants to show that there will be a group of South African Afrikaners that will most likely be approved, because I think he doesn't now want to open up his executive order and not follow through on it. So yes, the test can be applied widely, and the people could, no matter what the story is, they can just grant the refugee status, and that despite the definition, which is you still got to show persecution, you still got to fall within the test. But if Donald Trump and his political groupings or supporters, disciples, you call it what you like, if they decide it's a wide test, they're not going to get embroiled in too much vetting as to persecution, well, they're going to get it. But maybe he says, look, it doesn't matter what the grounds are. We want 100, we want 1,000 white people, Afrikaner people to come to America. He then proved his point.
Yeah.
Yes.
So another question from one of our listeners is what are some of the benefits that come with this U.S. refugee status? So if these people, let's say 100 or 1,000 or 8,000 get to America, what happens? Do they get given homes? Do they get given jobs? Do they start from scratch?
Well, the question, if Donald Trump was smart, he would be trying to find those refugees that could add value to America. Now, let's just say he's targeting the agricultural sector. If he was smart, he would want to vet these applicants or asylum seekers who clearly have agricultural skills. What if you went to a university and you studied agriculture and you one of the asylum seekers? Donald Trump says, look, I want 1,000 farmers because I'm going to put them in the farming community. Through Elon Musk, he says that the white Afrikaner, he or she's a good worker. So he identifies the farming community if you're smart, right? Now, here's the thing. They will get a free pass into America. They will have South African passports. You don't have to give up your South African passport. And that's also not the norm in refugee protocols. You have to give up your passport. So when you get into America, this is how it would probably unfold. You have to stay in America for over a year. You will then be able to apply for a green card, which is like permanent residence. And flowing from that, you can 5 years later get citizenship. So if that's not a benefit, then I don't know what is.
Yeah, Craig Smith in Cape Town. Thank you for chatting to us. He's an immigration lawyer at Craig Smith and Associate. I hope you understand better now about this U.S. refugee status. To me on the WhatsApp line says, Clement, don't refugees get accommodated in the host countries, not the country that is persecuting them? Because I said to you earlier on that the U.S. is now changing commercial space in Pretoria into ad hoc refugee centers. So Dumi is asking on the WhatsApp line, why are they creating accommodation for them here in South Africa and not in America? I think they want to plant people here under the guise of repurposing whatever buildings they have to convert reasons. I don't know what you mean by that part, Dumi, but I get the question that you're asking there. It's now 11:31. Maki has the latest in Eyewitness News headlines. Good morning.
Thanks, Clement. Good morning. We begin with breaking news. A shock verdict from the Gqeberha High Court. Nigerian televangelist pastor Timothy Omotoso has been acquitted of all 32 charges of rape and human trafficking. Omotoso and his co-accused, Lusanda Solane and Ziki Swasito, both senior members of his church, were arrested in 2018, facing a string of serious charges, including sexual assault, human trafficking and racketeering. The high-profile case, marked by delays, legal challenges and multiple attempts to have the trial thrown out, has gripped the nation for nearly 8 years. Solani, Sito and Omotoso walk free today with their names cleared by the court. Reaction to the verdict is pouring in and we'll bring you more in our later bulletins. AfriForum has threatened legal action against senior officials who have implicated the principal of a school where a 7-year-old girl was raped. The right-wing organization has written a letter to the Provincial Police Commissioner seeking an intervention, claiming that the SAPS failed to investigate the rape. And finally, in a bold move set to shake up the tech landscape, messaging app Mixit is officially back on the South African scene after years of silence. Once the world's largest mobile social network, Mixit's reboot comes at a time when the tech market is oversaturated by social media apps. Those are the headlines. This Eyewitness News and more at midday or as it happens.
EWN Traffic.
We start with some good news. No major reported incidents throughout Gauteng. An update from the previous incident, N1 North in Sandton. It happened just after Rivonia Road, causing some 20-minute long delay, stretching as far back as Winnie Mandela Drive. You can still continue on that. If you press for time, get onto Witkoppen Road, pass through Paulshof. There's now free-flowing traffic, just a bit of a snag as you approach Rivonia Road. Rivonia Road in Edinburgh, northbound to the N1 carriageway, seeing a bit of a snag. And then it's going to be those traffic lights slowing you down in Arcadia, Pretorius and Vessels, R21 and Mako, R21 and Solomon Mahlangu. This is in Monument Park, as well as Centurion Midstream and Nelmapius Drive. And then in the southwestern townships, Chris Hani Road, seeing some queuing traffic leaving the University of Johannesburg past Power Park until you get to Deep Kloof Zone 6. Next traffic update will be in 30 minutes or as it happens.
There's more EWN on air, online and on the EWN app.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702. Let's walk the talk.
It's 11:33. Let's find out what's coming up on 702 Afternoons with Relebohile Mabocha. Afterwards, we'll tell you what we're discussing this morning on our sharing space. Relebohile, good morning.
Morning, Clement. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. What's popping vandag?
Coming up on the show, we really wanted to just pick up on the conversation that we're having yesterday, where I was asking parents, caregivers, what are you doing to equip your small children or child in terms of navigating the realities of these sexual assault incidents that are happening at schools and just in life in general. So we've decided that we are going to spend the entire first hour joined by a psychologist and a social worker who deals with these cases, just to guide us in terms of understanding if you are going to, seek help, what you can anticipate, and hopefully that can encourage more to go open cases and things like that. But also for us to be having these very difficult conversations of how we're going to stand up as communities to protect our children. The second hour of the show, we're going to be having our masterclass with ABSA Home Loans. We're talking about switching to solar. What are the pros? What are the cons? and what you need to know all about that. Portia Lekape from Absa Home Loans will join us. So will Dean March, who's from Voltex, South Africa.
All right, that's what's coming up on 7:02 afternoons with Relebogile Maboja between 1 and 3 p.m.
The Sharing Space
on the Clement Manyathela Show.
702.
Time for the sharing space. This is a moment for us to share our stories. Always appreciate you sharing our stories with us. Whatever happened with you, wherever it happened, send us an email on cm@702.co.za if you think it's a story that other listeners who are part of the 702 family would like to weigh in on, or maybe you need advice from the CM Show family. You can send us an email on cm@702.co.za. Today we've got an email from Anonymous, and I'm going to read this email to you, and then afterwards we're going to take your calls and your WhatsApps. If they're asking for advice, please be so kind to advise them. If they're just asking for your inputs, let me know if you faced something similar yourself. And the email says, Dear Clement, as a pedestrian who navigates the local roads on foot, I've observed a disturbing trend that warrants attention. It appears that many drivers on our roads have adopted a culture of recklessness and disdain towards pedestrians. Day in and day out, I witness drivers exhibiting a blatant disregard for the safety and well-being of those on foot. Rather than yielding on pedestrians, they accelerate, often forcing us to scurry for safety. It's not uncommon to see drivers deliberately steering towards couples strolling along the sidewalk as if to assert their dominance over the road. Just recently, I witnessed a driver intentionally drive through a puddle, splashing water everywhere despite having ample space to avoid it. This incident left me wondering, is this behavior a manifestation of malice or mere thoughtlessness? I pose this question to your listeners. Do fellow pedestrians share my experience? And to the drivers, I ask, do you engage in such behavior with intent, or is it simply a result of complacency? Do you, as a driver, also notice some behavior that you may not like from pedestrians? And what do pedestrians do that is an inconvenience to motorists? I know that sometimes we also seem to have a disregard for cars and we cross in places we should not. But this behavior of motorists is unacceptable. How do you motorists navigate this, and how do we as pedestrians navigate it as well? I eagerly await your thoughts on this matter. Anonymous. Okay, Anonymous, thank you so much for sending us that email. And there are a number of issues you're raising here, and I have to agree largely with what you're raising here. I think we do witness drivers exhibiting a blatant disregard for the safety and well-being of pedestrians. I mean, when you go and, in fact, I've seen sometimes even in areas where there's a school, right? And there's a hump. Kinda, what is that thing when there's a hump, Abel? And then there's like those little signs with white linings. Kinda, what do you call that? So when there's yes, what is that? When there's a hump in a school area, like you have to cross over. There's like white. The what? Yes, do they call it the zebra crossing? Really? I didn't know that. So meaning that, okay, you guys can cross, we have to wait? Abel, did you know that? They call it a zebra crossing? Okay, that crossing. I've witnessed that even in streets where there's like schools. Drivers have no regard for the fact that the school is out or it's a break and there are lots of pupils or students that are going to be crossing the road. When they are in a rush, they're in a rush. And I wonder how we navigate that. And as a pedestrian yourself, maybe you can share your thoughts with us. But also as a driver, is this something you've witnessed, this total disregard for pedestrians? Or have you also witnessed uncomfortable and problematic behavior from pedestrians themselves? So for me, that's one thing I've witnessed, where we don't respect the zebra crossing anymore. as drivers, we're so constantly wanting to speed up. In fact, people are the ones who wait for you. I was at the airport just the other day, and I was crossing over. There was that zebra crossing, and people are just driving through, even when there are people waiting to cross over. We do not respect that anymore. What I've witnessed as a pedestrian / runner is that when you are running, when I'm jogging, I'm running on the road, I witness that motorists want to just dominate. They want to fill the road. You know, sometimes there is no enough pathway for me on the other side. So you're running, yes, not on the road, but you could be stepping on the road a little bit. And sometimes you've got drivers who are kind enough because the roads are not busy at that time. They give you some space. But you've got some drivers that are not going to care. Even when there's a car not coming on the other side, they just want to go towards your side. And I don't know what your experience has been as a runner. What's your experience with motorists even when you run? I want to expand it to that point because I've realized that there are some motorists who are so impatient with runners on the roads. And there are some roads that don't have clearly marked areas where people can run. And I often witness that motorists, some of them, just don't have patience for runners. They want to just dominate that road, even though they could give you some room as a runner. What's your experience? 011-883-0702. You can send your WhatsApps as well on 072-702-1702. It's 19 minutes before 12.
Aubrey Masango.
Weekday evenings,
8 to midnight.
To what extent are we seeing a justice system that only moves when there is spotlight on them?
We are definitely seeing a justice system that's responding to pressure and the spotlight. Unless we start to tighten the systems, you and I will be having a call on another occasion and something will have happened to a child and continuously see a lack of willingness to actually make it work.
Dr. Linda Ngube Nkomo.
Aubrey Masango.
8 to midnight on 702.
702.
My family's struggling with snotty noses and phlegmy coughs.
Oh no! Have you tried ACC?
ACC 600 is a convenient one-a-day effervescent tablet from 14 years of age. Or now also in a no-water-needed, fruity-flavored sherbet-like granules that dissolve in your mouth. Ideal for the on-the-go adult. Ask for ACC 600 effervescent or oral powder at your nearest pharmacy to get rid of the snotties and flemmings. And trust, if it doesn't say ACC, it's not ACC.
Do you have the pace to ace the race? The 3 million rand race. It's the one and only Spinner Zonke jackpot race, and it's exclusive to Hollywood Bets. Feel the heat from the hottest slots as you seek to spin your way to fabulous fortunes and precious prizes. A thrilling 3 million rand is up for grabs every Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday when you hunt for hidden treasures and spin for big wins. Bet now. T's and C's apply. Hollywood Sportsbook is a licensed betting operator. Hollywood Bets supports responsible gambling. No persons under the age of 18 years are permitted to gamble. Winners know when to stop. South African Responsible Gambling Foundation toll-free counselling line 0800 006 008 or WhatsApp HELP to 076 675 0710.
Let's face it, in this country, small business owners wear many hats, and they wear them brilliantly. That's why MTN and 702 wanted to bow hats to all the incredible SMEs of Gauteng for being such a valuable part of our communities and a vibrant force in SA's economy. At the 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN, because MTN is here to help grow their businesses and move them further. Go to primemediaplus.com now, enter your SME, or nominate a small business doing big things in the 702 Small Business Awards, brought to you by MTN. Today, we make moves. T's and C's and more on primemediaplus.com. The Sharing Space
on the Clement Manyathela Show.
702.
All right, 15 minutes now before 12 o'clock. Let's go straight to your calls. Semi, you are in Pretoria. Good morning.
Hi, Clement. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for accepting my call. You know, Clement, in South Africa, we have a problem of law. No law is actually followed in this country. People do as they please on the roads. Actually, there's a crossing in sub-school in this other place in Randfontein. You can see there's a zebra crossing, and there's also a traffic light that is not working. But usually when the traffic light is not working, the law says it must be stop and go. But they never do that. There's a zebra crossing and also there's a traffic light. But motorists, they never do that. They come there speeding and there are children crossing. There's a preschool plus a high school there. So you can imagine one day someone's going to get hit, and I can tell you, the politicians one day will wake up and start saying, yeah, what time? You know, they always rush last minute when things are happening, but they ignore anything until something bad happens. That's when they start scrambling and I'm looking for answers. Yeah, why was not it fixed? You see those kind of things.
Yeah.
Oh, South Africans, it's just in peril. We're in trouble, man. We are in trouble.
Yeah, Senzo in Pretoria, thank you. Semi, you are also in Pretoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Clement, the problem here in South Africa is that there is just no accountability. Motorists in South Africa have this thing in their minds that because they pay the fuel levy, then they own the road. I mean, you can see, for example, when there's traffic, heavy volumes of traffic, they'll drive on the pavement where pedestrians are supposed to, on the sidewalk where pedestrians are supposed to walk. So as a result, pedestrians don't have anywhere to walk, especially for taxis. You know, when there's like a gridlock on the road. Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
On the side of the road.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, this whole thing of driving around the humps, those humps are made for a reason, so that you can lower down your speed. They don't, when they go to a pedestrian crossing, they just run over the pedestrian crossing. They don't wait for the road users as well. And also this whole thing of texting and driving, using cell phones while driving, which contributes for 25% of the road
accidents
in South Africa.
Yeah. No, true. Semi, I got you in Pretoria. Thank you so much for that contribution. And then Beyond says, Clement, that listener, Anonymous, touched my heart. I don't know how many times I got splashed over my clothes, leaving me soaking wet. And by the way, I'm on my way to work and I'm forced to work with wet clothes. When it rains and there's water on the road, I run to go stand far so that the water doesn't reach me. But also how, like, people who just like go and you drive next to a pond knowing that that's going to end up splashing people with water. Can you imagine people who are on their way to work? That's just so uncaring. Nicholas, you are in Pretoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. How are you?
Sure, man. Go ahead.
I'm good. You see, this thing it starts with respect. If both the motorist and the pedestrians can respect each other, I think the problem could be resolved. Why I'm saying like this? Okay, on this pedestrian crossing and zebra crossing, zebra crossing, the motorists have to adhere. But then my problem is the pedestrians on the highway, on some robots and intersections, whereby they just cross, they just don't care. You the motorists, you just have to stop for them and whatsoever. I don't know whether it's the issue that people just want to get the paid from Ralf or whatsoever, but then in some instances there are pedestrians who don't even care where they are crossing at what time. Does the robot allow them to cross whatsoever? They just go through. So if we can just start to respect each other, I think the problem can be resolved. That's my take on that.
True. Nicholas, thank you for that. Your take. Milton, you are in Kempton Park. Good morning.
Good morning, Clement. Are you well?
I'm all right. How are you?
A very touching topic, man. The general lawlessness in South Africa on our roads is alarming, Clement. My take on the issue is that there's a general lack of respect of rules of the road. Pedestrians, because they don't have a license to walk, they've got a sense of entitlement. Equally, motorists are generally unkind towards pedestrians, Clement, and this is very painful because what happens is that we've got a high death toll on our roads because of pedestrians jaywalking. They don't even look at the robot. They just cross the road, thinking that the motorist must stop, because if a motorist hit a pedestrian, generally the consequences are dire, so it's not worth it. But can we run education programs where even pedestrians learn to respect the rules of the road.
Yes,
it is quite sad that some motorists would splash quite deliberately pedestrians walking along the road. It's not on. We need to respect pedestrians because they need to walk the roads. They're walking, they're innocent and all of that.
Yeah, and it goes both ways, Milton. Pedestrians as well. Sometimes also their behavior on the roads is, it's really, really not in light of respect for other motorists or even other pedestrians for that matter. So I think there's some thought that is also needed on their side. Rev on Twitter says, Clement, I've been observing pedestrians for quite some time. Pedestrians also just don't respect cars, man. They just don't move or give a vehicle space. They drive. Go Ivory Park, you'll be so amazed. Rough money is a problem. Just my take, bro. That's a message from Rav there. Rav, talking about Raf. Sandra, you're in Benoni. What are your thoughts?
Yes, good afternoon. My complaint is that I have been a driver and I have been a pedestrian before and now currently with my eyesight impairment. And so now I do have to walk everywhere. And I experience so much vehicles cutting in front of me where the traffic light is showing that the pedestrian is green and that we can cross. The vehicles just continue, the drivers just continue to cut in front of the pedestrian. So, even when there is, and they hoot because they think we're in the way, but it's our right to walk across. They are supposed to yield. Now, even when there is no traffic light, we have to try and do our best to look, even though we're vision impaired and we have a white cane or in a wheelchair for other people, elderly. We have to continue to look to see where there's traffic, and then we try to cross the road, obviously when it's safe, and we still get hooted at. Nobody yields for the pedestrian. And it's just not right that we get hooted at, and it's they're not obeying the law when it comes to the pedestrian traffic light. So that's my complaint. Yeah,
thank you for your contribution, Sandra. Absolutely get where you're coming from. Sandra in Benoni, let's go to your WhatsApps.
Good afternoon, Clement. Yeah, it's true. I was nearly knocked down in a zebra crossing, somewhere in a shopping center. The guy was zebra crossing, I thought that you're supposed to stop and it's like a yield sign, but no, you have to run for your life. They don't even know zebra crossing, which is zebra crossing is for pedestrians. This is very, very ridiculous and it's dangerous. They are very dangerous drivers.
Morning, Clement, and your listeners there. Listen, the issue of misbehaving on the roads, it's the listener who sent the email is quite correct, but it goes both ways. Even the pedestrians, I have some issues with them personally. Most of them, in terms of the intersections where you have traffic lights, it seems like they just never know when to cross and when not, or which traffic light to check whether it's safe to cross. And something else, if you check at the townships, mostly in the townships, people are just strolling on the streets when the car comes their direction. It seems like you as the driver, you have to swerve away from them. It's like they're just walking on the streets, and half of the time there are sidewalks. So yeah.
I can say here. I am a motorist myself, and I don't want to lie. I obey my brother, and I hear what the writer says every day, especially in Pretoria, where I work in. Claims that they even close the intersection. When the roads are talking, the motorists, they close the intersection. You cannot drive through because now they've blocked the way. You understand? I feel him or her. I don't want to lie. And then what aches me, as you say, there is a zebra crossing whereby a pedestrian must cross. They don't cross there. Claims that they just walk in the middle of the road. You are coming with a car, you almost bump the person. There is a pedestrian crossing here for him to walk in. Where's going with the child? She's crossing there or there. He's crossing there. The pedestrian crossing is here. What are you teaching to your child? You understand?
Yeah, what are you teaching, especially when you're walking with children? Hey, Zolile, you're in Tembisa. Hi.
Hi, Clement. How are you?
Sharp, man. Go ahead.
I'm good, thanks. My biggest worry, Clement, is the lawlessness on the roads of Tembisa.
Mm.
Everywhere you go, there's intersections, you see, that I don't go to. And I don't think I'm the only one. It's every day, you see, there's traffic jams at Busy Corner intersection, Beach Acres intersection, Emateni. You know, it would take you up to an hour, you see, to drive a distance of about, 500 meters, you see, in traffic every day. And the EMPD cops and the JMPD, they are nowhere to be found to us. It's not even an SAPS or anybody from the law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
Secondly, you see, the traffic wardens at Esangweni section every morning, they will be standing there folding their arms and doing nothing to control traffic. Taxis do as they wish, and they park anywhere in the middle of the road, and people are struggling. They find it difficult to cross over to the other side of the road to the taxi rank, and they must duck. You see, these guys of the taxi, lawlessness is very high, you see, on the roads of Tembisa. And thirdly, there's these bus stops for Harambe that have never been used, but there are security guys, you see, sitting there the whole time in the rain. The people that use these Harambe buses, they wait for the buses outside even in the rain. When on earth are these bus stops going to be functional?
Yeah. So Lile in Tembisa, thank you.
Hi, Clement. I get your point, and I agree with the listener with anonymous there. But the other one, Clement, is people that block sideways. Where it's a sideway, when you build whatever fancy thing there, and you expect people to walk on the road. Then the people that don't walk on the sideway or run on the sideway when there's a side path for you to run or walk on, and you choose to do it on the road. Clement, it's amazing. We, like, all of us, just need to take some introspection actually into everything, because we don't think that our actions have effects on other people. Where you build a fancy little shrub outside your yard and you block the sideway and people can't walk there, but you expect them to walk in the street. So I think we all need to take accountability and fix everything that we've gotten incorrectly so far.
Morning, Clement. Sam from Pretoria West. Clement, this to me just says we lack discipline both ways, from pedestrian side, from driver's side, but also to me it sends something different. I don't know, maybe people will understand. It seems like the unemployment could be solved because the sports department and recreation, they should just have to look at maybe on the ever planning, start to implement the plannings. Or, the runners should have their way, where they run, and then traffic officers, they need to be intensified, intensify the bylaws and all those traffic laws that need to be there. And also when they issue licenses, also they have to, actually there's no way that we cannot have people that are not working. Same from Pretoria, guys. Thank you.
You're with Clement Manyathela.
702.
Coming up next, the midday report with Mendy Weena. How are you doing, Mendy?
I'm very well, and you?
Good. Please, how are you going to help us understand what's going to be happening?
Does anybody really
Does
know what's
anybody
going
even
on?
know what's going on? Hey?
I actually posted on social media last night the two statements from the Democratic Alliance and ActionSA next to each other.
Yeah.
And does anyone actually know what's going on? So where things are at the moment, the DA's FedEx meeting this morning to try and work out what to do about going forward. We know the budget vote is at 2:00. We'll speak to Mdumiseni Ntuli from the ANC. Both the DA and the EFF have now written to the Speaker saying you cannot adopt a flawed framework. Please don't adopt a flawed framework because it will not have legal standing. And then we've got this leaked audio from the ANC's caucus meeting. So we'll look at everything and try and understand what it all means ahead of 2 o'clock. But actually, the big news story right now is the reaction to the Omotoso judgment.
Omotoso judgment.
It's shocking. I think a lot of people just reeling from the reaction to that. And the NPA really under fire.
Yeah, like, did they bungle this case, or there was
That's
just
what the
simply
judge suggests.
Oh my goodness.
So the judge suggests in her judgment that the NPA had bungled it. You know, to hear the testimony of
Remember
all
the
of those
testimonies.
women. So we'll speak to a reporter in court, get some reaction to that. The ANC Women's League is marching on Parliament. And then, just because we haven't got enough going on at the moment, a South African delegation has met with various officials in Washington to try and repair that relationship as well. So lots going on domestically and internationally.
All right, and it's all coming up on the midday report just after the news. Thank you for listening to the show. We're back again tomorrow between 9 and 12. Have a beautiful day, my friends. Bye-bye.
This is EWN.
Good afternoon, I'm Maki Molapo. We continue leading with this story from the Eastern Cape, where Nigerian televangelist Pastor Timothy Omotosho has been acquitted of all 32 charges of rape and human trafficking in a shock verdict handed down at the Gqeberha High Court. Omotosho was arrested in 2018 on multiple charges, including sexual assault, human trafficking and racketeering. The pastor, along with his co-accused Lusanda Solani and Ziki Swasito, both senior members of his church, stood before the same court this morning and will now walk free after a legal battle spanning nearly 8 years. Mungezi Koko has the story.
The trial, one of the most high-profile sexual abuse cases in recent years, was marred by repeated delays, including changes in legal representation, judicial recusals, and several attempts by Omotoso's defense team to have the case thrown out. The state presented harrowing testimony from survivors detailing how Omotoso allegedly used his position to manipulate young women into sexual acts, some as young as 14 years old. Despite this, the court found that the state did not prove its case beyond reasonable doubt, further adding that the witness statements were unsatisfactory, subsequently ruling in his favor, acquitting him on all charges. The verdict has already sparked outrage from women's rights groups who argue that justice has not been served. Mungezi Koko, Eyewitness News.
Staying with the courts, the bail hearing of alleged kingpin of a diamond scam, Louis Liebenberg, has stalled in the Bronkhorstspruit Magistrates Court. Liebenberg, who is one of the funders of the MK Party, is facing fraud, money laundering and racketeering charges for running a Ponzi scheme. The ally of former President Jacob Zuma and his wife Desiree are accused of running a diamond investment scheme, siphoning 4 billion rand from investors. Khomotso Modise is in court.
Louis Liebenberg ran his eyes through the small courtroom that had previously been packed with MK Party members in his support. Today, not a single member was in attendance, and so Liebenberg greeted the police officers instead, who were seated in the gallery, saying, "Hello, boys." The alleged fraudster's lawyers, who cannot be named, have asked for another postponement to prepare for his bail application, saying they could not consult while he was in CMAX prison. The court has allowed the request for postponement, but has warned that the bail application must proceed. Previously, Liebenberg fired his lawyers, tried to represent himself, and now has new lawyers before the court. His matter has been postponed to July. Khomotso Modise, Eyewitness News in Bronkhorstspruit.
AfriForum has threatened legal action against senior officials who have implicated the principal of a school where a 7-year-old girl was raped. The right-wing organization has written a letter to the Provincial Police Commissioner seeking an intervention, claiming that the police failed to investigate the rape. AfriForum says this has the impact to further target